happy with the presence, at least, of their American rider in this leading group, because there he is, just over on the left-hand side. Every now and again, the Argyle jersey slipping through. That's Stephen Kodzeb doing a great ride for the team this afternoon, getting himself into this breakaway. But he will be more interested in knowing what is the position of their team leader, Martin Maskant, fourth in this race last year, fourth in Paris-Roubaix, in Tour of Flanders 1 week ago. Well,
we'll keep an eye out for him, but I can't believe he hasn't made the peloton now. It's such a big group which is reformed here under the charge of Team Columbia High Road. The women's department won the Women's World Cup race yesterday with Ina Teutenberg. They are having a tremendous season again, Columbia High Road.
Well, Ina Teutenberg winning the women's edition of the Tour of Flanders a week ago as well, certainly dominating the women's racing, as the men's team dominated the international circuit for the top professionals last year. 4 high road Columbia riders on the front end of the main field. Gives us a chance, Phil, just to look back and see who is recovering in this bike race.
And this high road rider here, I think, is Boysenhagen.
Yep,
it is Boysenhagen, the winner midweek of Ghent-Wevelgem, his first big semi-classic victory, and he's riding those cobbles like an aged veteran right now.
Which is pretty impressive, Phil, when you bear in mind that he clocks in at 21 years of age. It really is quite phenomenal. He's going to be, I think, a star of the future.
Well, he's right up there, and he's trying to get through on the rough road to help his boys in yellow and white at the front of the race, because they're his teammates.
Well, still, they're only halfway through this section of cobbles. This is the 16th section to go to the finish, and it's one of the longest sections in the race this afternoon at 3.7 kilometers long.
It is, in fact, the longest, and it's not the smoothest by any means here. The boys are lucky they've got that little bit of mud sector, which is nice and dry to ride through on the right. Very fast pedaling here, but you've got to keep the eyes in the back of your head if somebody makes a mistake. Number 37, Chris Sutton, the Australian here, who is really doing well to be in this position right now.
Well, it's a very chaotic race, Paris-Roubaix, to cover, to try and figure out just who is where in an event like this. But Chris Sutton is certainly just about keeping himself in contact here as he weaves around the rider in front. He knows that he has to stay on the wheel of a rider. Once somebody lets the gap go in a race like Paris-Roubaix, it's very difficult to bridge that gap.
Well, he's been on the back end of a rider, letting the door open there, so Sutton moving on. He's had a win this year. He won the overall race at the Tour of Zeeland in Holland. So he's off to a good start. He finished 4th in the first big race of the year too, in the Tour of Qatar. So he's developing nicely now because he's still under 24 years of age.
Marcus Burkhardt on the left-hand side there, leading Team Columbia High Road. And the Tête de la Course, the leading 10 riders now coming off the cobblestone section. That's Steve Kodzeb sitting on the back there for Garmin.
Back up now as we come off Sector 16 now, with the peloton still in pursuit of 10 leaders, remember. And they're closing in pretty quickly now at 77.8 kilometers to go. But that is a massive peloton now in Paris-Roubaix with only 77 kilometers to go. Hard work had to be done, though. You're only here by the fact you're good, because everybody else is now behind.
Time for a bit of time out. There's George Hincapie with the white sunglasses sitting in the middle. This is Jeremy Hunt in the white helmet. I think everyone now is trying to figure out which teammates are here. Sylvain Chavanel is the man for Quick Step in the blue and white jersey at the front. So that would indicate that he and Stein de Volder have managed to catch back up.
It's a reassessment moment in the Queen of the Classics now, as the gap is at 1:35. Those guys, I suspect, they will feel they're under control by the peloton. They won't worry about them too much. The big push has been on. There's a lot of riders, and in fact, that is de Volder. And he's only just come up to the race here, so now he's got to get going quickly. Interesting to see if anybody waits for him. I suppose if you've got a puncture, Paul, that wasn't a bad time to have one.
Well, straight off the cobblestone section. I think the reason he probably wanted to change there, Phil, because he was involved in an accident. The bike was not 100%, but he waited until he got onto the smooth section of the course to get the bike changed. And they'll try and rectify that problem and get his machine back to him if they can. Astana now on the assault.
Well, this is an interesting move here. Astana don't really have an obvious winner of this race, but now they're playing an interesting tactic. Dirk de Mol and Alain Galopin are the two sports directors here today, not Johan Bruneel. And there's de Volder dodging through the cars here, making rapid progress up back towards that big group.
Yeah, he's going to take a few risks getting through the team cars to get himself back in the contention as soon as possible. And this is how dangerous and precarious it can be. But bear in mind, nearly all of the drivers of these cars are team managers who themselves have been top professional bike riders. They know what to look for, they know what to expect, and they will be looking not only in front of them, but in both the rear view mirrors on the side of the car to keep a very close eye on any riders who might be trying to catch up.
Just trying to work out for you who the Astana rider is who's made the move off the front. It's a tentative, and it might be a good move to develop a small chase group. We're still chasing those 10 riders, a minute 32, the latest time check we have, and it looks like he's caused a reaction here.
Well, it's a big reaction, and they're starting to stretch out once again into a big long line. They've got now around about 8 kilometers to go to the next section of cobbles. That's a 2.5 kilometer section from Worlin to Brion, and that will be section number 15 to go. I don't think there's any panic at all on the shoulders of Stein de Volder. He had his teammates alongside him. He had Sylvain Chavanel to pull him back into the bike race here this afternoon. And just check there, a rider from Quick Step has dropped back to look after him, and I think that was Matteo Tossato.
Well, I must say that Stein de Volder, 29 years of age, he'll be 30 in August, is showing a great maturity there. Hardly a panic at all. He chose when to change his bike, and he's pedalled himself back into the action. And as we go across the open fields here now of the area North Pas de Calais in northern France, heading towards, slowly but surely, the Belgian frontier. And the field still having to assess themselves here. There's no obvious cracking of the peloton yet. And the gap now, 1:32 still.
The leading group of 10 riders cannot be too far away from getting themselves into the next section of cobblestones. This is a clever little move by a former winner. This is Frédéric Guédon trying to get himself back into the race.
Now he's coming back. The last Frenchman to win this event back in 1997. Guédon, almost, it means handlebars in French, doesn't it?
Just about it does. He's also a winner of Paris Tour as well, and amazing for this man. He doesn't have very many professional victories, Phil, but most of the ones that he has won are big ones.
Yes, he chooses his races well, I have to say that for Frédéric, and I think he's got some good form this year despite the ages and years. Heading on to sector 15 now, and this carries a 3-star, and another rider is down. I didn't see who it was.
That was actually the motorbike.
Just by himself.
The motorbike decked it going. This is a little bridge not too far away from the section of cobblestones, and in fact it was in fact the neutral service motorbike that went down at that point.
Look, they're forgiven, Paul, because everything's a challenge for everybody in Paris-Roubaix. It is the one race when riders collide with vehicles and cars and they don't say a word, they just get on with the job in hand, because it happens on a regular basis.
This is a crazy race. It's a mad race, and that's why so many people and so many professional bike riders really love this race. You have to have courage. You will have bad luck. Looking over to the left-hand side, you can see Fabian Cancellara with those orange glasses of his. On his shoulder there, just over to the far side, you can see Pippo Pozzato. It doesn't look as if he's going to follow Tom Bonan everywhere this afternoon like he did a week ago. No,
he was criticised a bit for that, and Tom Bonan himself found he ran out of steam as well. It was a very strange race, the Tour de Flanders, in many ways, but this is another day and a very, very different race. Tom Bonan's the man dead centre, in the black and white, in the blue and white rather, looking at each other, seeing who is around him.
Moving up in the orange jersey, Juan Antonio Fletcher. He would certainly like to get himself a victory. Onto the cobblestone section now. 15 to go.
15 sectors, short, sharp and sweet, but this one is quite long at 2.4 kilometers now. And 1.5 miles of bouncing cobblestones.
A 3-star rating, so it's an average section of cobblestones. The most difficult ones are 5-star rated. This is the front end of the race. Still Greg Henderson up there making himself a useful ally, I think, later on in this race for Team Columbia High Road. And only one man has disappeared from this 11-man leading group at the start of the day, and that was the Frenchman on the same team as Wesley Sulzberger, and his name was Johan Offredo. We saw him getting picked up by the main field a little while back.
But the cracks, and there's a problem here. This is Hincapie. Now what is he? Got a back wheel puncture here, and just waiting for George Hincapie is Boysenhagen as well. Well, this is, again, a little slice of bad luck for George. He's wrestling with that wheel to get it out of the bike.
It's stuck in there with the rear derailleur. The mechanic is up alongside him. But as a great champion, just look how he's not panicking. He's waiting for it all to come back together, lets the mechanic do his job of work. He was very lucky that the team cars were very close up behind him.
Well, a back wheel puncture. He's got the tyre in now. Boysenhagen is waiting, a very valuable rider who came back, don't forget. George could have been isolated here, but it's not as bad as that right now. George has got to get back. Now, this has all happened on sector 15.
I don't think he will have too much of a problem getting back at this stage because he was in a compact group of riders. The team cars were very close behind him. And you see, looking at the main field here, Phil, they haven't put the hammer down on this section. They've had too much of a battle leading up to this. So I think we can relax a fraction for the United States and the big supporters of George Hincapie, because I put my neck on the line that very quickly Hincapie will be back in the pack.
I think you're right, because it's an unmanageable size group, this, and he's hit the right time of the race, if there is such a thing as the right time of the race.
If you're going to have any bad luck at all in a race like this, you've got to make sure that it's a time like this.
Sector 15, 2.4 kilometres of racing, a couple of 100 metres into it. Hincapie gets a flat tyre. Boysenhagen seemed to wait, but I haven't seen him drop back to pick him up just yet.
Well, I'm just looking back down through the team cars there. I can't see the yellow jersey of George Hincapie, but I wouldn't be surprised to see it coming up very rapidly. The pressure is not on at the front end of the main field here, Phil. And
how lucky is that?
He's very lucky to have a man like Boysenhagen alongside, waiting for him to pace him back into the pack. If that was his only bad luck of the day, I think he would say thank you very much.
Well, he's had some bad luck too, and he's had some great luck in this event, let's face it, with the best results. But I think every time something happens to George, you can hear the oohs and the ahs go around the world. He's a very popular boy.
I have to say that this man, George Hincapie, wearing number 51, has actually got two teammates there alongside him waiting. The other one is Marcus Burghardt, who I would have said is a pre-race favourite to try and get the victory here this afternoon. But he's decided, no, I'm going to go back. I'm going to, in fact, it looks like it's Bernard Eisel, I think.
Well, Eisel will be the obvious choice, but we don't quite know which ones of the boys are still in the race up here after the Forest of Orenburg. But there's no doubt that Boysenhagen is the other rider who's with him, the winner in midweek of Ghent-Wevelgem. And George was really a party to that, because he eased the field backwards and allowed Boysenhagen to break away and win the day. Maybe time to return the favour, perhaps. It's Liquigas setting the pace here now.
This is why Paris-Roubaix is such a special race. Everybody will have some bad luck out on the course, and what you have to do is get over that. Don't have it make a blow to your morale. Fight your way back into the event. Never give up. Never surrender. That's what it's all about, Paris-Roubaix. Courage.
Meanwhile, back at the front, as we see Martin Weinen set the pace up there now. Different ride to what he was earlier on the cobbles. These are still the breakaways. They're regrouping. There are 10 of them here. George Hincapie at the moment in a spot of bother, and the gap from peloton to the break is 1:32.
Well, now just looking at what's going on here, just sitting on the back there, number 68, Wesley Sulzberger, will be wondering exactly what is he doing here at the front end of this bike race, because he is seeing what one of the toughest bike races in the world is all about. We're now starting section number 14 to go, 2.4 kilometers in length, and this is the section from Tilloy to Sarre-et-Rosier. The leading group have got themselves at still a 1 minute and 30 seconds advantage, but the main field behind are now starting to pick up the excitement a fraction. We've no information at all as to where George Hincapie is, but I still believe that Hincapie will ride himself back into this race. There's still a very long way to go at 71 kilometers of racing. So Sulzberger on the back there in the blue jersey, blue shorts and white jersey, being very motivated by his team manager, Mark Madio, who over the years has looked after a lot of English-speaking and Australian riders as well. It seems to have been sort of a school for Australian riders to come across to. Started off with Bradley McGee, and ever since then there's a number of Aussies have been on that squad. A good start, I think, and a good introduction to the international circuit. Section number 14 to go here. This is a long section of cobblestones, a 2.4 kilometers in length. It's a 3-star rated section of cobblestones, as we're looking here at the front end of the bike race, with 70 kilometers to go to the finish. And that looks like Servais Carnarvon here, riding his 15th Paris-Roubaix here this afternoon. There is the American rider, and there's another crash at the back. These crashes are coming thick and fast here this afternoon, and that looks to me as if that's one of the riders from Case d'Epargne, and he went down extremely hard on the ground. I think that rider who went down there, in fact, was Emmanuel Erviti of Spain, and let's just see how that happened. It's right at the middle. You see these directional islands are very dangerous. He just clipped it, and a rider went straight over the top of him, and the race referee in the red car there has to get by and get himself back into this race. Kurt Atler Arvidsson on the front end of the main field. Again, for Team Saxo Bank, are starting to look like they're a very serious squad here this afternoon. And maybe Fabian Cancellara has come back into the fold.
Well, as we're on this section now, which is section 14, 70 kilometres left to ride. And this is now when the screw is beginning to turn even tighter.
Well, that's what it's all about. It's hammering your opponents all of the time, just slowly but surely weakening them and hoping that you've got enough energy yourself left when it comes to the decisive cobblestone sections down towards the end. And those are usually the cobblestone sections of Mons-en-Pévèle, which is coming up fairly shortly. And, of course, then the very difficult Pavé or the Carrefour de l'Arbre, which in itself, 2.5 kilometres long, has got a slight incline. And I've seen many a rider crack on that one.
I must say it's taking an interesting turn, this race now. There's an awful lot of riders still in contention here. And we're getting to the sections of Pavé now. Very often the winning breaks have formed in Paris-Roubaix. So the riders who are feeling strong will try to push forth now. The gap is 1:38. They're not bringing back that breakaway anymore.
Well, George Hincapie and his teammates have just managed, Phil, to get themselves onto the back end, the tail end of the race convoy. So, yes, in a few moments, Hincapie will be back in the pack. But what a job of work number 53 did. Edvald Boasson-Hagen, winner just a couple of days ago of Ghent-Wevelgem. He's learning the hard way what it's like riding for a top team.
But he's done well. He really has repaid, George, there. A man that's won the semi-classic midweek, went back and has played a major part here in bringing Hincapie back into what he will see as his race, Hincapie. This is the one that he wants finally to try and win and become the first American to do so. You always get a little bit of bad luck. Let's hope that's it for the day for George now, because his mates have put him back in the race.
Well, I think if he was going to have any bad luck at all, that wasn't a bad place to have it. I don't think he's expended too much energy getting himself back into the race. But just look how precarious these sections are now, as Servais Knaven here is using that little bit of experience he's had. Over 15 participations in this bike race, Phil. The last 14 that he's participated in, he has always finished. And bear in mind that he won one.
He did indeed. And Servais Knaven attacking on sector 14 here from the leading group, remember. He's one of the 10 riders up front. The gap at 1:38. Well, this is an interesting move here by a man who's now 40 years of age, and you wouldn't know it, would you?
Well, he was brought into this team, Team Milram, to be a pilot fish for some of the younger riders. Well, today the best way of being a pilot fish is to lead from the front, and that's exactly what he's doing. That is the main peloton, which is a large main peloton. And finally, George Hincapie has managed to make contact with the field again after a mechanical incident, which it took quite a long time to get changed.
Bonen's teammate, Matteo Tassato, at the back of this group at the moment now. It's a few deep breaths for George, and he's got to move rapidly forward here because danger is just a wheel length ahead on the cobblestones.
Well, Tassato sitting at the back of this group, but he knows he has to stay in contact with this group for as long as possible. Laying down the cards on the table now, though, are Team Saxo Bank. This is them on the front in the white and blue jerseys with the black shorts. The man with a different coloured jersey there is Kurt Atler Arvidsson, the Norwegian national champion and a winner of a stage of the Tour de France 12 months ago.
But the same team, and now they are really beginning to tap out the rhythm here, which indicates to me, Paul, that Fabian Cancellara is on a good day.
Yes, Bradley Wiggins sitting at the back of the group for Garmin Slipstream, and I wonder what the position is of Martin Maskant. It's so difficult in a race like Paris-Roubaix because there are so many things going on at the front of the race, the back of the race, in the middle of the race, that it's always difficult to pick up just exactly who is sitting where.
There aren't too many Garmin Slipstream down there. I can't see any at the moment at the head of the peloton. The Saxo Bank boys in that white jersey, black stripes, riding forward. They've got a lot of riders in this group right now, which is all's well for Fabian Cancellara.
Well, Phil, they have 7 men in the first 7 places of the main field, and they also have a man in the leading group of 10 up the road. So I would have to say this afternoon, Saxo Bank have reported themselves present and correct.
8 man in a team, don't forget. 67 kilometres to go, and that breakaway still hangs in with a 1:40 advantage.
Back of the group, just all of the time scanning the rear end of the group to see if I can spot any riders from Garmin Slipstream. Martin Maskant was 4th overall in this bike race last year. He was 4th a week ago in the Tour of Flanders, and everybody had him tipped as an outsider for victory here this afternoon. But I'm having a feeling here that Team Saxo Bank have got a little bit of an idea here. Now, the reason they've done this is there's obviously a slight crosswind. They're trying to split this main field before they get to the next section of cobblestones in 7 kilometers time.
Well, what a tremendous... Look at the gaps they forced open here between the riders in the peloton. The doors are opening all over the place. That is tremendous. The wind is coming from the right shoulder of the riders and forcing them into a long, thin line. Any weakness now, it finds you out. And this is tremendous team time trialing by Saxo Bank. They are driving at the front. I keep looking for Marty Mascant. I think Bradley Wiggins is sat at the back there in the hope that Mascant makes contact. But right now, really, he'd do better to move up the field, because this peloton is cracking wide open at 67 kilometers from the finish. This is a very, very tough section now of the Paris-Roubaix. Odd men just left there. That group was with the peloton. Now it's a chasing group and having to do something special to get back on terms. It's not often you see Paris-Roubaix in this sort of stress, believe me. So sitting here down the back of the line, that's Bradley Wiggins here. There he is, number 38. Number 5 there is Tassato. And see what's happened? They've lost, the door has gone completely open now. They're going to have to try and repair the damage and waste more energy on the gendarmes there on his specially adapted motorcycle as he heads towards the next section of Pave. And the Rabobank rider here, Pedro Horillo, in there to help perhaps Juan Antonio Fletcher, now finding himself, he got picked off in the group and he's now trying to get around that group and race himself back into the action. Referees are doing well. We're approaching the feeding station here now. Second feed of the day. If you're in bad ways, this is where you tend to abandon the race. But this race is still very hot in this particular area. And the damage all being done by Saxo Bank. Stuart O'Grady, the former winner of this event for Australia, out with injury, would appreciate this sort of an effort for his team today.
He certainly would, but again, a preconceived plan, and it's not surprising to note that Bjarne Riis came down to beat in the team car for today. So much did he have confidence that the team had a great chance of coming up with a victory once again. He really is a great master tactician, and the pressure on the front, that's Cancellara just swinging off. Not even worried, Phil, about the fact that we're still looking at 65 kilometers to go to the finish.
Look, they've spread eagle the peloton again on a smooth stretch of road here, and Cancellara will be in his element at this sort of a race. They're coming out of the second feed. There is huge problems for the riders behind now, and they might find that when they were tensing themselves for the battle of the cobbles, they may have lost this race on the smooth roads.
Well, there's two very nasty sections of cobblestones coming up in about a kilometre's time, Phil, when they come into the outskirts of Bouvry-la-Forêt. There's a section of 1.5 kilometers, which is 13 to go, and then almost immediately after that is the old Chemin de l'Abattoir, the chemin which takes the riders into the outskirts of Orchy.
The track to the slaughterhouse. That might be just very effective today.
Tommeke over on the right-hand side, the affectionate nickname for Tom Bonen. He has not been caught out in the crosswinds. He is very attentive in a race like Paris-Roubaix. He's won this race on 2 occasions. He did say that he feels it's a lot easier to win Paris-Roubaix than the Tour of Flanders. Well, he proved that last week when his teammate came up with a win.
Well, he's got to go through it all again today. He's looking to win it for a third time, Tom Bonen. The record is 4 with Roger de Vlaming, another great Belgian cyclist. As we look here now, as a little bit of a regrouping as we get into the town of Orchy, as the riders now reform, but they've left a little bit of chaos. Our cameras have moved forward, but I think behind now we've got a lot of split groups trying to get on turn. There aren't so many riders here now.
Well, looking over the shoulder, the rider from Saxo Bank wants to see how much damage did they put in. They took advantage there of the crosswinds, and that's the important thing.
But the thing is that despite all this chasing, they're taking a lot of time out, but they're not bringing back that breakaway of 10. It's 1:24 is the gap just at the moment. Sat here at the back of the race, number 133 is Damien Gaudin of France on the B-box team.
And also number 38 for Garmin Slipstream, the American squad. The British rider, 3 Olympic gold medals, and that's Bradley Wiggins.
And that was on this visit to the Olympic Games. He's got plenty more as well. But he's sat at the back and he's got split off because that was the damage done there by the team of Saxo Bank. Now they're saying it's a 1-minute gap now, so all of a sudden it's come down quite dramatically here as we now race on to the next sector of cobblestones here, number 13.
That's from Bouvry-la-Forêt to the outskirts of Orchy, a section at 1.4 kilometers in length. And it was all blue and white jerseys on the front this time, Phil, for the first time, and that was Team Quickstep laying down their law.
This is a very, very tough section now of the Paris-Roubaix. Odd men just left there. That group was with the peloton. Now it's a chasing group and having to do something special to get back on terms. It's not often you see Paris-Roubaix in this sort of stress, believe me. So sitting here down the back of the line, that's Bradley Wiggins here. There he is, number 38. Number 5 there is Tassato. And see what's happened? They've lost, the door has gone completely open now. They're going to have to try and repair the damage and waste more energy on the gendarmes there on his specially adapted motorcycle as he heads towards the next section of Pave. And the Rabobank rider here, Pedro Horillo, in there to help perhaps Juan Antonio Fletcher, now finding himself, he got picked off in the group and he's now trying to get around that group and race himself back into the action. Referees are doing well. We're approaching the feeding station here now. Second feed of the day. If you're in bad ways, this is where you tend to abandon the race. But this race is still very hot in this particular area. And the damage all being done by Saxo Bank. Stuart O'Grady, the former winner of this event for Australia, out with injury, would appreciate this sort of an effort for his team today.
He certainly would, but again, a preconceived plan, and it's not surprising to note that Bjarne Riis came down to be in the team car for today. So much did he have confidence that the team had a great chance of coming up with a victory once again. He really is a great master tactician, and the pressure on the front, that's Cancellara just swinging off. Not even worried, Phil, about the fact that we're still looking at 65 kilometres to go to the finish.
Look, they've spread eagle the peloton again on a smooth stretch of road here, and Cancellara will be in his element at this sort of a race. They're coming out of the second feed. There is huge problems for the riders behind now, and they might find that when they were tensing themselves for the battle of the cobbles, they may have lost this race on the smooth roads.
Well, there's two very nasty sections of cobblestones coming up in about a kilometre's time, Phil, when they come into the outskirts of Bouvry-la-Forêt. There's a section of 1.5 kilometres, which is 13 to go, and then almost immediately after that is the old Chemin de l'Abattoir, the chemin which takes the riders into the outskirts of Orchy.
The track to the slaughterhouse. That might be just very effective today.
Tommeke over on the right-hand side, the affectionate nickname for Tom Bonen. He has not been caught out in the crosswinds. He is very attentive in a race like Paris-Roubaix. He's won this race on 2 occasions. He did say that he feels it's a lot easier to win Paris-Roubaix than the Tour of Flanders. Well, he proved that last week when his teammate came up with a win.
Well, he's got to go through it all again today. He's looking to win it for a third time, Tom Bonen. The record is 4 with Roger de Vlaming, another great Belgian cyclist. As we look here now, there's a little bit of a regrouping as we get into the town of Orchy, as the riders now reform. But they've left a little bit of chaos. Our cameras have moved forward, but I think behind now we've got a lot of split groups trying to get on turn. There aren't so many riders here now.
Well, looking over the shoulder, the rider from Saxo Bank wants to see how much damage did they put in. They took advantage there of the crosswinds, and that's the important thing.
But the thing is that despite all this chasing, they're taking a lot of time out, but they're not bringing back that breakaway of 10. It's 1:24 is the gap just at the moment. Sat here at the back of the race, number 133 is Damien Gaudin of France on the B-box team.
And also number 38 for Garmin Slipstream, the American squad, the British rider, 3 Olympic gold medals, and that's Bradley Wiggins.
And that was on this visit to the Olympic Games. He's got plenty more as well. But he's sat at the back and he's got split off because that was the damage done there by the team of Saxo Bank. Now they're saying it's a 1-minute gap now, so all of a sudden it's come down quite dramatically here as we now race on to the next sector of cobblestones here, number 13.
This from Bouvry-la-Forêt to the outskirts of Orchy, a section at 1.4 kilometres in length. And it was all blue and white jerseys on the front this time, Phil, for the first time. And that was Team Quickstep laying down their law.
Well, is that what they're doing now? Are they actually taking this race and putting in a serious effort here now? The big teams of the world of cycling are putting their big men into the engine room and driving on to try and split this race up. The bottom of our picture, you can see the trouble some of the riders are now in. This rider for Agri Tubel is Kevin Ister. He's having a good early season.
Well, he was a bit of a surprise finisher in races like Het Volk in the early part of the season, when I think he finished in second place. But this is the acceleration for Quick-Step there now, slowly but surely turning up the gas a fraction. Every time they accelerate like this, it adds a little bit more fatigue into the legs of their adversaries.
Well, there's a lot of urgency around now, and they're just trying to drive this race on to eliminate it.
Bonen in person stepping on the tempo there. He's decided he wants to take it to the boys here this afternoon, and that he's unbelievable the way he floats over the cobblestones, and his acceleration here has started to crack the group. Wind a little bit further forward. This is still the leading group of 10, Tête de la course, and it's still Greg Henderson there wearing number 56, looking nice and comfortable. Tom Bonen has a teammate in this leading group of 10, that's Wynant's number 8. Wesley Sulzberger is still in here for Française des Jeux and for Australia, and so too is Servais Knaven. I have to say, l'ancien, as they say in French, the old man who's still riding with the legs of a youngster.
And there's only 9 riders there, and this is a gap. There's a group coming up now, but it surely can't be the chase group, as our clock's telling us 50 seconds here. But it could well be the big effort of... Oh, there's something happened in the crowd. Goodness knows what happened there. Nothing to do with the riders.
Very strange. In fact, there was a motorbike there, and there's a motorbike on the ground, and I don't know at all what happened there. Bonen looked across to see what was happening. Maybe there was a motorbike parked at the side of the road, and it just tipped over. We might get a chance to look at that once again. Picking up this rider now, who was in the break from B-Box Bouygues Telecom, Steve Chanel, looking over his shoulder to say, whoa, here come the big boys.
Well, as the race goes on here now, there was certainly a spectator and a gendarme on the floor there, but the race itself continues to drive on. This is a major section in this year's Paris-Roubaix. It's 62 kilometers to go. The split is being forced wide open now.
Van Sommeren over there wondering, where is my man, Leif Hoster? Cancellara says, well, guys, this is me. I had a hard time in the Amgen Tour of California, but now I am back.
Somebody knew something we didn't. Cancellara has been very, very quiet, but today he has come out to try and win his second Queen of the Classics race. And at the moment, the race is completely split asunder. They're saying now 20 seconds is the gap to the leaders. I'm not sure whether Servais Knaven is still in the lead, but I only counted 9 men in that leading group.
Well, I think the man who came back, Phil, was the rider from Bouygues Telecom, Steve Chanel. I'm certain that a man like Servais Knaven won't get caught out by a move like that. But Bonen looks over his shoulder to see what sort of damage he's done. Also in there, Juan Antonio Fletcher for Team Rabobank, and he's being extremely attentive himself.
Fabian Cancellara, though, is the man who is now feeling his old self again here now, the man that took the gold medal in the Beijing Olympic time trial last August.
A little bit of frustration there for Tom Bonen. I just saw him gesticulating with his arm there to shout to the other guys, look, we've got a split here, no need to mess around, let's put the hammer down and get a decision made.
Third wheel is Johan van Sommeren, but without the right men, he's out to ride for himself perhaps today now.
For Van Sommeren looking over his shoulder, where's Leif Hoster? I'd like to know what's going on here this afternoon. This is the town of Orchy at 62 kilometers to go, and once they come out of this town, they go through a small industrial area, and then it is, Phil, that section of cobbles we always talk about, the Chemin de l'Abattoir, as you said, the road to the slaughterhouse.
And that might be very fitting today at 61, inside 62 kilometers to go now. This field is all, I think it's Heinrich Hausler here, the rider for Cervelo, which is something of a surprise after what he told us yesterday, but he's mixing it with the best right now. Very select little group there, some 10 riders about to join 9 front runners. That'll put us, these riders haven't been seen since about the 50th kilometre of the race today.
Now you're about to see why the men go in the early morning breakaway, because there's a rider from Quick-Step in that early morning breakaway. We've talked about him a lot, Martin Wynant, and he now all of a sudden will change his tactic around. Having sat on the back of that group for a long period of the race this afternoon, I'm certain that on the next section of cobblestone, somebody's going to ask him to turn up the gas.
Well, looking now at the coming together of the lead chase group in a terrific piece of pacemaking. And now Tom Bonen and Fabian Cancellara are catching the leaders at 61 kilometers to go to the finish. It's the first time that anybody in the main field has seen the front runners. And George Hincapie, I don't think, has made it on this escape.
Well, it looks like he got caught out. Tom Bonan has got the bit between his teeth here this afternoon, because he is not even going to wait for the cobblestones, Phil. He has decided, I want this race. I'm going to race all the way to Roubaix here, and he goes out on the attack. Scrambling across the gap there is Fletcher, and Tom is going to have to slow down once again and wait and rethink the next move of the day.
Well, this is going to be an interesting section now. We're heading to some really rough patches of Paris-Roubaix as the riders cross the town of Orchy and head to the trail to the slaughterhouse, and Bonan has got himself right on the front in that blue and white jersey. Quick drink before we go back into hell.
Well, Heinrich Hausler is in this group. Just having a look there to see if that was Jeremy Hunt as well, who managed to get there. Some teams completely and utterly got caught up in that acceleration a few moments ago of Team Saxo Bank. Tom Bonan was not one of those riders. About a kilometre now to the next section of cobbles at Orchy. Juan Antonio Fletcher is in this group. Steve Kotzat, Phil, because of the fact that he was in that early morning breakaway, is still there in the orange helmet over on the left-hand side. He is riding at the front end of Paris-Roubaix for the United States.
Sector number 12 now. This is Orchy. It's a 3-star 1,700-metre journey, but it could be so crucial today now. There's so many riders scrambling behind to try and get back in touch.
Well, Cancellara there on the left-hand side. He knows this section of cobblestones. He's all of a sudden managed to get himself back to form at the right time. Sick and having to retire as the leader of the Amgen Tour of California on the first day on the open road. Went back to Switzerland and had a little problem when he went out training. And now, all of a sudden, he's got himself back to form at the right possible time.
Sector 12. Remember, there are a total of 27 here. And now Cervelo are driving at the front here too, just trying to get on terms here. The Rabobank rider is going off the back now. Not surprisingly, Ghost Postuma losing ground. It looks like as though we've got Steve Kotzer also dropping back now. Not surprised, they've suddenly lifted this up to a new dimension.
Looks like Leif Hoster was just trying to ride across the gap there, Phil. He was one of the riders caught out in the acceleration, but he knows now is the time. If you want to get a victory in Paris-Roubaix, is not to give up and keep yourself in contact. I can see Johan van Sommeren dropping to the back of the group, and if he looks over his shoulder, he may well just see the shadow of his own teammate, and there he is, just about 10 seconds off the back.
He should rejoin inside 60 kilometres to the finish now. This is an insane race, to quote Bernard Hinault, the great winner of this event and the 5 times winner of the Tour de France. But it really is at this stage every man for himself.
Well, another man coming across here for Team Quickstep is their big, strong Sylvain Chavanel. Frédéric Guédon is there as well, number 61. Also, Leif Hoster, number 41. The experienced men here of Paris-Roubaix, and sitting on the back, one of the most experienced, 101, Servais Knaven, riding this event for the 15th time.
And finished every one and won it once, and he's tagged on there nicely. He was in the front group. He's just slipped to the tail of it now.
This is the section known as the road to the slaughterhouse, Le Chemin des Abattoirs, and it looks as if these men are starting to really cut deep into the meat.
Cervelo have the advantage. They are the ones now pushing the pace and just waiting to hear the clatter of metal behind as riders fall. 2 riders from Team Cervelo driving. They've got, numerically, they've got the advantage just now, along with the blue and white of Quickstep. It looks as though Servais Knaven might have cracked here.
Well, it's not surprising, Phil. He was one of the riders in that early morning breakaway. They put a lot of pressure into staying off the front end of the main field, and now he's paying for the early morning efforts.
Well, there'll be a regrouping when they'll assess who has come through this strongly. When they can, Tom Bonan again starts to drive as they continue to race. All of the riders together, bottles on offer here. Nobody now. They're so careful that now they've got to watch each other and make the best of it.
Well, this is an interesting move because this
isn't Tom Bonan, is it?
It looks like this is Martin Wijnands coming across, and he's actually accelerated over the top, relayed there by Henrik Hausler, who looks back to see what sort of damage they're doing. This group has not yet managed to get themselves organised. Guédon is the man on the back, number 61. In front of him, 41, Leif Hoster. A little bit further up is Greg Henderson, probably looking over his shoulder to say, yes, where is George Hincapie?
Sylvain Chavanel, number 2, was there as well, another who could yet be the winner of this race. And no sign of George Hincapie at the moment. There is a steady regrouping. It's not over yet. This race is now being spread out a little bit. Most of the pace being done at the moment by the Australian-German Heinrich Hausler.
A lot of discussions going on there. I think they want to know just exactly what is happening in this bike race. It's scrambling across. The big teams now are all represented. Cervelo test team have got their man there. Quick Step probably not happy with the man they've got present. I'm not sure who the Rabobank rider is, but I would presume it would have to be Juan Antonio Fletcher.
Big Tom Bonham carries #1 as last year's winner now. He looks around him all of the time. Johan van Summeren, number 48. There is the gap now, which is spreading the heads of state in this year's Queen of the Classics. And there's a little bit of shadow boxing creeping in now. Nobody quite knowing how to answer the moves.
Well, we're looking at about 5 or 6 kilometres, Phil, on the flat road before we get to the next part of the race. And that, in fact, is Casper Klostergaard, who's got across for Team Saxo Bank. 6 kilometres to the next section of cobblestones, and then not too far after that we've got the very nasty 5-star section of Mons-en-Pévèle. 3 kilometres, a dreaded section for any bike rider.
5 riders, the original 10 breakaway are now spread asunder. Klostergaard, though, was part of those original riders, and he's still fighting in amongst it. But the teams are changing now, as the Liquigas rider here is Quinziato, and that is why Liquigas have raced all day at the front of the peloton.
A dangerous man to have in this leading group, I'd have to say. Quinziato, he's been in good form over the last 5 days. Juan Antonio Fletcher must be thinking, right, mates, this is my turn for L'Espagne this afternoon. Never in the history of the sport, Phil, has a Spanish rider won Paris-Roubaix. And this man, I reckon, has got a very good chance of being in this move.
Well, he's a man for the classics. He's proved it time and time again. He holds the best finish ever here, along with his countryman, Poblet. So they've had a second place, but they've never had the win. Maybe today.
Well, I don't think Quick Step are too happy with the combination of that group at the front, so they've decided they want to get some organisation here. And Tomaca, again, Phil, is put into a position where he's actually panicking a fraction and using up all of his teammates.
He's got to be careful here, because he does tend to get a little bit excited and throws his energy to the wind. It cost him, I think, a good finish in the Tour de Flanders a week ago. He's got 5 riders here at the moment. He's got a teammate up here, although he won't be too happy with the situation, because it's Wouter Wieland, who has been in that breakaway all day, and he must be getting tired now.
We're looking at 4 kilometres to go now to the section of Orchy to Bercé. And that's why I think Tom Bonan has got his men to come to the front end of the main field. Bonan has definitely got the legs for this bike race, but he keeps getting caught out at the wrong end of the crossfire.
Through the S's, these 5 riders are trying now to reshape Paris-Roubaix. While the only remnant of the breakaway is Klostergaard and Wieland. The other 3 have come up to them, Quinziato, Hausler and Fletcher. And I always feel as though Hausler is waiting for his teammates, but he's stronger than them, and he's making the moves himself.
The funny thing is, he's riding a dream start to the season, Phil. He's a man who last year I regarded as being a bike racer who was basically just a sprinter and a man capable of winning an individual stage here or there. But deep down inside him, he felt himself that he was a classics rider. This is Juan Antonio Fletcher, and he's got the real legs this afternoon. It looks like he's been involved in a slight accident a little earlier on, because he's pretty much patched up, and they've got themselves 15 seconds advantage over Bonan, and we're now looking at 3 kilometres to go to the next section of cobbles.
Second in Paris-Roubaix 2 years ago, Juan Antonio Fletcher. He's now in a group of 5 leaders. They're being chased by 12 riders. This is Klostergaard here, also in that leading group. He's been out in front now for 200 kilometres.
Well, this breakaway, I would say, Phil, is going to have itself 2 passengers, because Klostergaard, as you mentioned, has been in the breakaway for a long time. His legs must be starting to pain quite a bit, and they won't get any assistance either from Wouter Wieland. He will be under strict orders not to ride in this group.
Well, he certainly won't ride with Fletcher and Hausler in there. 2 possible winners now if this goes. 12 riders together and chasing. Sadly, no sign of George Hincap. He seemed to have suffered in that crosswind. Will not really have recovered from the chase back from the flat tyre, I suspect. These boys, though, are not going clear yet. Sylvain Chavanel in that chase group as well, a great ally of Tom Bonan. The odds at the moment, Paul, are in the favour of 3 teams: Saxo Bank, Quick Step and Cervelo.
They're the teams that have got the most number of riders in the first 25 places out on the open road. But first of all, if they want to get themselves... Oh, watch yourself, Heinrich. Don't look over your shoulder like that. That reminds me of a move another Australian used to make many years ago, Phil Anderson. He always used to look back over his shoulder to see what sort of damage he was inflicting on a race.
Well, what happened there was, I think Heinrich was about to look over his shoulder and see where the rest were, and the road changed direction, and Heinrich almost lost it there. On to sector 11 now. We're running out of cobbles, but there's still plenty of nasties. The next sector's 5-star. This one is 3 as we head towards Bercy.
2.6 kilometers in length, 54 kilometers to go. And going into that section, I made it around about 10 seconds, the difference between the two groups. And I wouldn't be surprised to see big Tom Bonin putting the hammer down here just to try and nail them back. He knows that he has to get himself back into this race. He cannot give anybody, especially a man like Juan Antonio Fletcher, a 15-second advantage.
Well, there is Tom, and he's actually on the wheel there of Wouter Weyland, so he must have come back from the lead group as Bonin now checks into his back wheel. So we didn't see when that happened, but certainly there's the group coming for you now. Cancellara, the big danger for Saxo Bank, is in there. Leif Hoster is here for Silence Lotto. Chavanel still very much the dark horse who could run away. Roger Hammond is here. Tor Hushoft is here. They're the Cervelo boys, which we thought that possibly Hausler was working for, but just now he's in front, and Andreas Clear is here too.
Well, good to see Greg Henderson there in the yellow jersey of Columbia High Road, still looking fairly comfortable sitting on the back of this group of the heads of state of Paris-Roubaix. Sylvain Chavanel is looking rather dangerous there as well, and he may well be the dark horse here this afternoon. They may well switch the tables around a little bit later on and give the Frenchman a free hand. After all, he was the man who was very dominant last week in the Tour of Flanders and played the team card to absolute perfection.
Sitting at the back there in the yellow and white of Team Columbia High Road is Greg Henderson, then New Zealander who's been in the break all day. He must feel a little bit confused now because, unlike the others, his team leader has not joined him in the front. George Hincapie still down the road a ways.
Well, Hincapie, we have another. This is Bonin, and right on his wheel this time is Pipo Pozzato. It's looking a little bit like a replay there. You see, this man had done his job for the day, Phil. He's gone.
That's Valent who's gone there. Number 8 sat up, was in the breakaway. He's now passed out of sight. And Bonin now as the team leader, it's up to him.
Well, look how he can accelerate. He loves the cobbles. He loves this classic. And he knows that the 10 or 15 seconds, he's got to put it behind him immediately, because the next section of cobblestones they will come to, Phil, is Mont-Saint-Pével. It's 2.6 kilometers in length, and it is a very difficult section of cobblestones. And that's why I think Bonin has taken the chance here to ride across this gap. And that's
Pozzato, yes, Pozzato and Hushoft, the 3 riders now trying to reach those leaders as our camera swings up, and there they are. 5 of them here, and big Tom Bonin, a previous winner 1 year ago and 2 times a winner, is bringing up Pozzato and Hushoft. These are the Iron Men of the Queen of the Classics.
Look at the ease that Tom Bonin has ridden across that gap. He's used his acceleration to bridge the gap very quickly indeed. He's joined the leading group of riders just when he needed to. Trying to get across there now is his teammate Sylvain Chavanel.
Well, this is yet another phase in the changing face of the Queen of the Classics today. Tor Hushoft there, who won the first Belgian Classic of the year, Het Nieuwsplag, based in Ghent in February. And no Norwegians ever done this one either. This is the nasty stretch of this piece of cobblestones. Time has been in the past, we've seen that covered in water and riders skid for miles, but today it's just dust.
Well, Bonin made the effort to get across the gap there. He'll start to feel a fraction more comfortable. These riders are going around these corners at an incredible speed, but that acceleration of Bonin to get across the gap has forced the other riders now in the second half of the race here, Phil, to react and come back into it.
In all, there are 15 leaders again now. 15 riders. Some are tired, don't forget. Some were in the early breakaway. The rest have fought the way to be in front of our cameras. There's been no easy route to the front today, that's for sure. But there never is, you know, in this event. And just turning the gas a little bit here now. Andreas Clear, just dangling off the back. He was already up there when he saw the arrival of his teammate Hushoft. Also up here is Heinrich Hausler, another black-clad teammate of Clear. We'll be very careful here.
It could really end up being the battle of the teams, because the big teams that we talked about before the start of Paris-Roubaix, Saxo Bank, Quick Step, And of course, Team Cervelo are the teams that are represented at the front of this race by multiple riders. And there's a move now coming from Sylvain Chavanel. Now, this is going to put the weight onto the shoulders of everybody else.
Sylvain Chavanel attacks. He's on the start of his best ever season, this rider. He's got a new team, and Quick-Step are playing the cards on the table one by one.
Henrik Hausler was the man who saw that as a very dangerous move and nailed him back immediately. The way Hausler is riding here, Phil, I think he knows that his teammate Thor Hushovd has got a very good chance of victory here on the Velodrome of Roubaix.
And we haven't mentioned Fabian Cancellara for a few minutes, but he is also in this group of riders. Let us not forget that, and he is a huge danger. He will try to hold off any attack until the last 8 or 9 kilometres, I think. Then you use his specific talent of riding alone against the watch and try and ride them all off.
Frederic Guénon at the back here, but the attacks are coming thick and fast at the front. And this time it's Cancellara having a dig.
Oh, must have been here in the commentary.
He obviously was. Followed there by Johan van Summeren, followed by Juan Antonio Fletcher, and again Tom Bonen making sure he doesn't get caught out.
We're heading up to just 50 kilometres left to ride now. We're beginning to see the cream of this year's Queen of the Classic races. Very sad to see that in those crosswinds, Hincapie didn't seem to make it, but there's still a tight chance yet. We've no idea now where anybody is. Our cameras are right at the front.
Johan van Summeren wondering whether or not the counter move is going to come from his teammate, and his teammate that's in this group is Leif Hoster. He's been very close to the victory on a number of occasions in these big cobbled classics. That's him at the back, number 41.
Well, as we look down from the belfry here, there is the head of this year's 107th Paris-Roubaix. I'll make it 15 riders have come together. The boy in the lime green will be Quinziato. He's the only one here. And in the centre there too is Van Summeren. He's the taller of the two. Leif Hoster is here. Cancellara, Hausler, Thor Hushovd, Tom Bonen, Sylvain Chavanel. These are big names. Any one of these will be worthy winners of this event.
Just gone through the official banner at the side of the road there, Phil, indicating 50 kilometres left to go to the finish. That's 31 miles of racing and still 9 sections of cobblestones.
15 leaders. This looks like Chavanel again. He's having a dig now, and he's being chased once more. Clear has gone after him.
Well, Clear is obviously digging extremely deep there to make sure that at least his team, Cervelo Test Team, are represented in the front group. By the way, just for interest, Sylvain Chavanel has had a special pair of shoes made for the bike race here this afternoon. You get a chance to see them there. They're turquoise blue.
Very attractive.
But not fast enough, because it looks as if everybody's coming back. Fletcher, the man in orange there, making the effort to pull everyone back.
Hausler slipped to the back of the line here just for the moment. There he is. Just seeing who else is coming up. In front of him is the Scandinavian rider from Denmark, Kasper Klostergaard. He's got to be tired. He was in the original break of 10. Now, I don't know what Heinrich was saying there to Klostergaard. Just take it easy.
Careful there around the directional island. Everybody nice and safe. The man who is riding the most sensible race so far is the man at the back in the red and white there, the black jersey of Team Lotto. That is Leif Hoster. He hasn't made any efforts at all, like Cancellara, like Tom Bonen, like Hausler. He's just sitting there waiting for the moment to lay down the hammer. And he's a man who I think could launch a very serious attack over the next couple of cobblestone sections.
Well, we've got plenty of 5 stars. We've got 2 5-star stretches left and quite a few 4-star stretches to come. So there's plenty of rough roads ahead just now. Just looking down there, it looks like Quinziato has moved to the front in that lime green. We've dipped down behind the houses. There's Quinziato. You can see him now as he makes this corner first.
This is Mont-Saint-Pavel.
And this is a 5-star section of cobblestones now as we enter Mont-Saint-Pavel. This is Sector 10. As we look now at the leaders, there's 15 riders come together. Sadly, no American here. George Hincapie hasn't made it. But Cancellara is here. Heinrich Hausler is here. Tom Bonen, the winner, in second place, to keep an eye on the fares. It's Andreas Clear setting the pace. Thor Hushovd is in the group. So too is Chavanel.
This is a 5-star section of cobblestones at 3 kilometers in length. And look at the flags now starting to show the wind that is pushing these riders, buffeting these riders as they get closer and closer to Roubaix. It's a nasty section of cobbles here this afternoon as we have a quick look. And you can see there that I think we're going to have a little bit of respite for a while, Phil, because I'm not sure whether or not anybody is too keen on launching the attack after all of the viciousness we've had so far.
48 kilometres left to ride now, and it's the boys in black who are trying to use quite a numerical advantage here as they can drive on these cobblestones. They're holding at a sensible speed here because they've now come down to the elite of the day. 15 riders, 48 kilometres or 30 miles still to go. The stadium now is packed here in Roubaix as they watch the action coming towards them, and it is Cervelo. We've seen them ride this sort of a race already last week in the Tour de Flanders, and they got it all wrong at the finish. What are they going to do today?
Well, you think the section of Mons-en-Pavel has finished.
George Hincapie leading the charge behind.
On the same section of cobblestones. Hincapie now trying to ride himself back into this race here this afternoon. He's not asking for any help. That looks like Roger Hammond over to the right-hand side. He's looking to find himself a minute to pull himself back into this race. He will not give up. That
is not impossible to bridge a 1 minute gap. And George Hincapie has got himself no friends here. One of the big favourites left to chase, split off in the crosswinds. He's got to close a minute. It is a big ask, let's face it, but it is possible.
All he needs really, Phil, is for a slight amount of tactical manoeuvring in that leading group of riders, and Hincapie can get himself across the gap. Look at the position of the man. Look at his body language. That is not the body language of a man who wants to give up. He doesn't want to surrender in Paris-Roubaix. It's such a special event.
But he's only got one teammate to help him here, and he's doing most of the work himself. He's so anxious to try and repair the damage. There's a big hole in the peloton between the front 15 and this very large group here, and they know Hincapie's reputation, and it looks as though they're not going to help him.
Well, he's the man who has missed out because of the fact he had a mechanical incident before that long section of road where there was a crosswind where Team Saxo Bank put the hammer down. George, I don't think, had managed to get himself back to the front end of the main field, and that, I think, is a little bit of bad luck. Yeah, you can see Clear setting the pace in front of Tom Bonen. Bonen has also been down in a crash because you can just see his shorts there on the left-hand side, a little bit dirty.
Well, as we're looking here now, we've got most of the names for you now. Tom Bonen, Sylvain Chavanel, Fabien Cancellara, Matti Breschel is here also, and Casper Klostergaard, Leif Hoster, Johan van Sommeren, Frédéric Guédon, Juan Antonio Fletcher, Quinziato, and the British rider Roger Hammond. They are some of the riders in this front group.
Bonen is going again. He's putting the hammer down on this next section of this Mons-en-Pavel cobblestone length. Behind him there is Pipo Pozzato. He has now decided that he's going to split this group. He's a man who has got a real dedication to win this Paris-Roubaix this afternoon. He's trying to do something special there. The man on the back there is Juan Antonio Fletcher. He wants to stay in contact too. That then in fourth position is Thor Hushovd.
But just look at the style of this man now. He just smashes on those pedals. He's broken the group again. He's pulling away 5 or 6 riders here as the door is opened.
The fifth rider in the line there is the man we mentioned just a few moments ago, Leif Hoster. He's been sitting at the back waiting to see when the effort needs to be made. I think he's just made a very serious effort.
1 minute the gap to the split containing George Hincapie, but the leaders themselves have now split under the impetus of the champion of Belgium. Well, he's not literally the champion at the moment, but he certainly rides like one, Tom Bonen.
Well, Pozzato, unlike last week, has decided, yes, I'm going to work with Tom Bonen here this afternoon, and we're going to damn everybody else to the back end of this main field. And this is a serious acceleration. Quinziato now, number 88, is being dropped from that group.
Well, that's proved a little bit of a cobblestone too far for Quinziato, as he's cracked there under the impetus. Still looking here at the riders chasing. This is the second group, and George Hincapie trying to bridge the gap here.
With the help there of Roger Hammond, one of the men in black from Team Cervelo test team. And I have to say, this is proving to be a very difficult section of cobblestones.
So we're watching the crowd here enact the situation now where we're seeing 5 riders trying to push themselves into the lead. 4 riders now, and there's a little bit of a bridge going on here as again Tom Bonen and Pozzato see the others about to rejoin, or do they?
Well, Quinziato are scrambling here. They've turned right now, having come off the section of cobbles at Mons-en-Pavel, and they've got 6 kilometers before the next section, and that is at the Pont-à-Marc. And Quinziato now is going to dig very deep to try and stay in contact here if he can, but he's only going to come back onto the second half of the split.
Well, Tom Bonin, you can't fault the fact that he's doing everything to try and win this race, but he's finding an awful lot of tenacious riders are preparing to go with him. There is Pozzato, who shattered Bonin and really took him out of the race in Flanders. He's with him again now.
Well, one team having been severely criticised by the Belgian press so far this season is Silence Lotto. Well, Silence Lotto now happen to have two riders in this leading group of 6. Johan van Summeren and Leif Hoste. Hoste still playing a waiting game. Now, this is a first interesting gap. That's around about 15 seconds to the second half of the split, and they're riding into a headwind.
Yes, and that's what's helped the split, of course. Well, it's becoming a battle of the Belgian riders yet again on French soil here. And Monzon Pavel has caused a bit of a split with Bonin, who is now right up front there. And with him is Pozzato. As we go back, Johan van Summeren, this is Leif Hoste sat at the back here now. He's made the first split, and also there is Thor Hushoft. It's beginning to look like a strongman's breakaway. There's the full lineup: Fletcher, van Summeren, Hoste, Bonin. 5 terrific names in the world of cycling, and there's the 6th.
Pippo Pozzato. I have to say, Johan van Summeren is an incredible bike rider, Phil, because he can sit at the front of any bike race, I think, whether it's Tour of Flanders, Paris-Roubaix or the Tour de France. He's prepared to ride himself out for all of his teammates. Thor Hushoff now is taking the responsibility for Team Cervelo test team. This is now starting to look like the heads of state.
Well, they're looking at each other. They're not putting their backs into it. It could all come together again here unless they do something about it. Pozzato's going to have to take up the running. The two riders from Silence Lotto in second and third wheel. They've sat on and watched so far, but they've made the move. Now they're going to have to help to drive it.
Well, Race Radio telling me now, Phil, this is a 20-second advantage. And for Tom Bonin, he's got to be feeling quite comfortable because Bonin has one advantage over the other riders in this group. He doesn't have to win this bike race alone because he knows exactly how to win this race on the track from a group. One team who got severely caught out in the crossfire with the team that started this split, and that's Team Saxo Bank.
Yes, well, you never know when the tide turns, do you? You seem to be in complete control of the race. You go over a section of cobbles and you're in all sorts of trouble again. Now racing towards sector 9 of the cobblestones at Mérigny. And this sector will go on now. There's only a 2-star, the next one.
It's a very short sector, Phil. It's only 0.7 a kilometre, 0.7 of a kilometre in length. But it's really setting the riders up for what comes afterwards, because in about 20 kilometres time, 16 kilometres time, they've got the cobblestones of Sizouin, and they are very long and hard, and that's where I think we might see the next attempt at a decision being made.
Well, one thing's for sure, the majority of the favourites have got to the sharp end today, sadly without George Hincapie, who had a bit of bad luck there, and that really put him on the defensive. Next time will be sector number 9. And there it is. As I say, it's only a short one. We're now at 216 kilometres covered of this year's Paris-Roubaix. And there's still per many one from 6 riders at the front. And there's another 10 chasing just behind.
Well, I have a feeling that we're going to see Johan van Summeren now completely and utterly sacrificing himself for the team here. He went straight to the front on this cobblestone section. He will be feeling very comfortable in the fact that his team leader, Leif Hoste, is in the group. But they've got to try and hold off Team Saxo Bank, who've got all of their riders in the second half of the split.
Well, that big acceleration by Tom Bonin really caught out Fabien Cancellara and the Saxo Bank riders. He hit them at exactly the right time, as it turns out, because Cancellara done a big turn on the front. Now the Silence Lotto boys are driving, and this is Hoste.
Hoste on the front now, taking over of his teammate Van Summeren, the taller rider in second position. Hoste is really stamping on those pedals. He's stretched out the gap now to 24 seconds as they come off this 9th section before the finish, Mérigny to Pont-à-Marc.
Well, Hoste hasn't won a race since 2004, but he is still one of the favourites for today here. This is Fletcher packing his pockets, the Spanish rider, again in at the kill of a big world classic.
Well, sitting on this group here, which is being led by Team Saxo Bank, is a man wearing number 2, and that is Sylvain Chavanel. Now, if they pull it all back together, you can be certain to see an attack come from the Frenchman, who's probably now starting to nurture thoughts of the possibility of a victory in his home race.
The strength of the big teams around you now. And Saxo Bank, who looks to be so much in control here for Cancellara, are on the defensive, and they're not looking like they're going to reshape this just now.
Well, they've lost themselves 25 seconds. We've got a fairly long section of flat road, 3.5 kilometers before section number 8 to go. And the next section will be the section just on the outskirts of Enevelin. And that's what I think these riders from Silence Lotto realize. Now's the time to put the knife in and try and get that gap up to 35 or 45 seconds. And then they can start to figure out how they're going to lay down the next part of their tactics.
Heading to the last 8 sectors of cobblestones now. 41 kilometers still left to race here. A mere 25.5 miles of racing. But there's still 1 or 2 pitfalls on the way. 6 riders shaping it up. Pizzato, Bonen, followed by Thor Hushoff, Van Summeren, Hoster and Fletcher. Everybody else has got to fight back.
Well, Kinziato recovered a fraction there, Phil, because he's got himself onto the back of this group. I'm happy to see that Frédéric Guédon as well, the former winner, who's becoming somewhat of a veteran of the sport now, has also seen this gap. They're saying that Roger Hammond is in this group.
Well, Hammond was in the group apparently, but I haven't actually seen him. But there were 4 riders on Cervelo there.
Well, I don't think either of those 2 riders there are Roger Hammond, and I'm pretty certain that was the shape of Roger Hammond in the group with George Hincapie, who we saw about 10 kilometers ago.
Well, this group here has pushed it out now to 30 seconds, so they're edging away here. Is this the express train to Roubaix right now, driven by the rider who won this event last year? He wears number 1, Tom Bonen.
Well, I think the other riders in this group now, Phil, are going to have to start to think how are they going to get rid of Tom Bonen, because Bonen, I think, if he comes onto this group, onto this velodrome with this group of 6 riders, there's not many riders in this group are going to get their wheels across the line in front of him, except possibly Pipo Pozzato.
What a way to spend Easter Sunday, Paul. Tom Bonen snatching a drink there. The sun is beginning to peep through now. It's a lovely warm spring day here. The promise of rain has gone away as these riders try to get to grips with the queen of the classics. The man in black is Thor Hushoff, the god of thunder here, who wins big races and wins them with a lot of regular appearances at the front. He started well this year in Belgium with a win of the Ghent Classic race. And now, not too far from Ghent, he's racing towards Roubaix.
Oh, well, it sounds as if Race Radio's calling forward for some race help for Johan van Summeren. Well, in about a kilometre, they're going to go into another section of cobblestone. So I hope for Johan van Summeren, Phil, it's not a mechanical incident. Tom Bonen going to the back to talk to his team car.
As we drop back to the second chase group here now, which contains Fabien Cancellara, but also the very dangerous Sylvain Chavanel. There he is, sitting and waiting now, resting on the fact that his man, Tom Bonen, is up front. And if this group gets dragged across, then he's in with a chance as well. Well, on to number 8. Here we go. This is a 3-star now, and it comes at 219 kilometers in and 1.4 kilometers in length.
And who's going to set the pacemaking over this section of cobblestones? And I wouldn't be surprised, Phil, to see that once again it's big Tomoka Bonen. 1.4 kilometers in length and just inside of 25 miles. Just look how fast he went round that corner there. He's complete and utterly confident in how his machine is going to handle these stones.
30 seconds is the gap now to the 6 leaders. Slowly but surely, Tom Bonen is stamping on these pedals. Every time he sees a cobblestone, he jumps on it. And we're at sector 8 now, and there is Bonen driving. He's never happier than when he's on the front, but he's got a big rival there in the Van Summeren just behind.
Well, also got a big rival in Pipo Pozzato, the man who followed him all over the roads of Flanders last weekend. I have a feeling, Phil, if I was to be Tom Bonen's team manager here this afternoon, I would actually try and calm Tom Bonen down a fraction, because if he uses too much of his energy, he could find himself in a bit of difficulty when we come to the next section of cobbles, or a couple of times to the Carrefour de l'Arbre, because he may well find the counter move coming from Pipo Pozzato.
He's got to be wary of Pozzato, and he's got to be wary of Leif Hoster too. This is the chase group, the Cancellara group we'll call it now, as they're on the same sector of cobbles. There's Quinziato. He was blown away from the big move, but he's got himself back into the chase. Guédon is there as well, Francais de Jeu, another man who's won this race, number 61.
Well, they're slowly pulling themselves back here because it's down to 25 seconds and they've got to give everything they've got. They've got a lot of passengers in that group, Team Saxo Bank, and the reason for that is they are the team who have missed out this afternoon. Johan van Sommeren, man of the match for Team Silence Lotte. Whether he's riding for Leif Hoster or riding for Cadel Evans, he will give it the absolute and utter maximum.
He won the Tour of Poland, and that's the only race he's ever won as a pro, I think. And it's all because he just gives himself to his team leaders, whether it be the Tour de France or Paris-Roubaix. And he's riding at the front now for Leif Hoster.
Well, there's Pippo Pozzato, 161. Tom Bonen won't be too happy to have him in the group because he's probably the most dangerous man in the group for Tom Bonen. I do think, though, one man who is extremely dangerous is Leif Hoster, because if they give him the chance of getting off the front end of this group, they might not see him again. And Juan Antonio Fletcher proving again, Phil, that he is one of the serious contenders in any of the cobbled classics.
Well, as the results will show you over the years, Spanish riders don't race well in these northern classics. They don't like the roads, they don't like the conditions, they don't like the food. They don't just like being back home in Spain. But this man is the total exception to the rule, along with Oscar Freire, sadly out with injury. But Fletcher always puts in a performance, and today is no surprise to see he's the last survivor of primarily a Dutch team.
Pozzato coming to the front. He dreams about winning Paris-Roubaix, and so too does Thor Hushovd. This is the group of George Hincapie at the Arrière de la Course. Hincapie riding at the front end of the group. And I feel a little bit sorry for Hincapie because he actually was at a situation where when the race split to pieces, he was at the back of the pack.
Well, he's in a bunch of 20-odd riders there, and as you can see, there's 18-odd passengers because it's just George on the front doing all of the work to try and put matters to rights. No one helping him. That's the lonely life of being a star, I guess.
Well, for George Hincapie as well, it's one of the final chances he's got of winning a Paris-Roubaix, and he won't give up until he's got himself right down to the velodrome here.
So, as the field regroups the situation, 6 riders are now heading off Sector 8. 7 sectors to go. They're trying to hold an advantage over the rest of the race of 25 seconds here.
Well, I think now that all of the riders in this group are starting to participate in the building up of what should be a winning advantage, because it's slowly now, Phil, starting to creep up to the 40-second mark.
Well, the elastic is stretching. It'll hang on in there for a while and then ping, and they might be away. But just a little bit concerned that Tom Bonen is such an exciting rider, and he likes to get to grips with the race, and he gives it his best shot, but he mustn't throw all his energy away just yet. There's 1 or 2 riders up here and not throwing all theirs away.
Well, we're looking now at about 12 kilometers to go to a very difficult section of cobblestones, and that is the section at Sizouin, which comes at 26 kilometers to go. And that's where I think we may well see the next challenge coming to somebody trying to win this bike race. Bonen, I think, will be very attentive of Leif Hoster and, of course, of Pippo Pozzato. But he's got to make sure that he doesn't expend too much energy, because he needs that on the run in towards the finish.
Well, the next sector of cobblestones, number 7, is nothing to write home about. It's actually it's 2 in 1, really, isn't it? It makes a total of about 700 meters. A little bit of tarmac in between. 35.7 kilometers left to ride here now, and the gauntlet is on the floor. And who's going to pick it up and take the challenge here? The leaders are Pozzato, Bonen, Fletcher, Hushovd, van Sommeren and Host. The 2 teammates, van Sommeren and Host, have the advantage, at least numerically, and they've got room to do the old 1-2 if they attack.
Well, 2 riders in this group, if they want to win, I think have to take the opportunity to try and attack. And one of those is Juan Antonio Fletcher. The other, of course, is Leif Hoster. If it comes down to a sprint, I don't think Hoster's got very much of a chance against Pippo Pozzato or Tom Bonen. And he will know that in the back of his mind. And he'll know to win Paris-Roubaix here this afternoon, he's got to win it alone.
I think you're right there, actually. Yeah, he will know it, and so will van Sommeren. And van Sommeren might be the first to try and shake up the lead group. The Hincapie group is now slipping away, I'm afraid. 2:32. That 40 seconds to the chasers is what was originally the 15-man escape, now down to these 6 leaders and 9 chasers behind.
I think Bonin is probably fairly happy with this situation, and as well the fact that Pipo Pozzato is no longer just following around but actually participating in the pacemaking in this group. The next time check that came through over race radio there was crackling through at 45 seconds. So I think they may well have broken the back of the spirit of Team Saxo Bank this afternoon.
Well, Pozzato in this group has never had a high finish in Paris-Roubaix. He's had a high finish in most of the classics around this region, but not this one. So today might be his day. Quinziato is in the chasing group here. Gaydon just ahead of him there. Number 155 will be clear. And they are really trying to put Cancellara back into the action, but I don't think it's going to happen now. I think they, unless something goes tragically wrong on some of these cobblestones, the race might be right here to the finish.
Well, this group of 6 now are all sharing the pacemaking. They now know, and I think they're trying to get it into their minds. They've got to build up on that advantage before they start to think about trying to win Paris-Roubaix individually. They know that the next few sections of cobblestones are very strategic and very difficult. So, of course, the next one, which is important to me, is the cobblestones at Sizouin and Borguel, followed by Quinfin-en-Pévèle, and, of course, the very decisive cobblestone section of the Pavé de l'Arbre.
6 chases 9. There's the makeup of the 9. They're still saying Roger Hammond is in this group. We'd like to see him. And Heinrich Hausler, we know, is in this group. This is Quinziato nearest camera. Chavanel there. Not too sure what Chavanel is saying.
It's not Roger Hammond, unfortunately, for us as Brits in this group. In fact, it's Andreas Clear who's in this group with Heinrich Hausler. So I'm 110% certain that I saw Roger Hammond in the group behind with George Hincapie.
Well, it's 151, and I think it's 155, the number of Hausler. It might be appearing on the cameras being picked up slightly wrong by the race referees. But anyway, it's immaterial at the moment. As with the Belgian flag flies here now as we get closer and closer to the frontier with France. 33.8 kilometers to go. And now we're heading on to another stretch of cobblestones.
Yes, and that will be section number 7 to go, and those are 2 stitched together to make a distance of 0.7.
By the way, is the Moulin of Vertin. The windmill of Vertin.
The Moulin, I understood. Unfortunately, I'm glad you did the translation for everybody else. And a beautiful moulin it is as well. This is the next section of cobblestones. And the gap is now stretching out to in excess of 50 seconds.
Well, so far, so good for the breakaway of Pozzato, Bonin, Fletcher, Hushoff, Van Summeren, Hoster. The only odd winner would be Van Summeren, in fairness, because the others are all team leaders and well known for winning bike races.
Well, this section, although it's only a total of 0.7 of a kilometre in length, has been given a 4-star rating. But it's been revised now to a 2-star rating.
Oh dear. 33 to go. Yes, you've got to keep up with the graphics. It's only a short stretch, but it's also part of the next stretch as well. So it's not an extra section of cobblestones, this one. There are 2 sector 7s.
154 Thor Hushoft, and that's the man who, when I spoke to Heinrich Hausler yesterday, said he's the man for us, I think, in this year's Paris-Roubaix, and he's the man that we will be working for out on the course. Sylvain Chavanel wearing number 2 there for Team Quick-Step. He's a teammate of Tom Bonin, just sitting there thinking he's just got to sit here until something else might happen in the event.
Yes, and then nip round them and take 7th place because there are 6 leaders just now. There are the 9 chasers. This is the group that split up in the crosswinds that left George Hincapie at the back end, unfortunately. Here is Sylvain Chavanel, Quinziato, as they continue to ride on here.
The other rider from Quick-Step in the group is Wouter Weyland.
He's done well to hang in.
He certainly has, and Quick-Step turned it around to put themselves back into a very strong tactical position. A little bit of chatting going on at the front there. Probably Wilfred Peters coming up to Tom Bonin saying, Tomica, just calm it down a bit now. We've almost got the 1-minute mark, so you have to make sure that you don't use too much energy and get countered on the run in towards the finish, because the next section of cobbles is going to be the section of Sizouin and Borguel, and they are very difficult. We've seen the race split there a number of times previously, followed up by Quinfin-en-Pévèle, which is a slightly uphill section where a few years ago George Hincapie crashed out of Paris-Roubaix when he was in the chasing group with Tom Bonin, his teammate at the time.
It was indeed. He's made a left turn there onto a very nasty bit of road, which is Spread Eagle, the breakaway, just for the moment. 105 we're now hearing, so they are pushing on this group and working very well together. They're telling us 102 here but also hearing commentary from the race referees.
I think I trust the race referees, because they will have taken that by hand at the side of the road. Very often the time gaps we get fed into the television are done by GPSs mounted on the motorbikes, and it's the difference between the two groups, so it depends on whether the motorbike's at the front or the back of the group. Hushovd now starting to answer the questions of something he's been saying since the very start of this season, that he wants to come to Paris-Roubaix this year to win it.
Best place ever, a 9th place finish. Big improvement today. Even if he finishes last of the breakaway, that would be a 6th. The rider who wears number 1, his shorts are bearing the souvenirs of war out in the bush today, I think, because he's fallen, Tom Bonham. This is Hoster. No, it's Van Summeren. He's now driving on. He'll give his all today in the hope that Hoster can finish it off.
It really is funny when you follow the sport of professional cycling in Belgium, because the Belgian press, they will rip a team to pieces, and all of a sudden Team Silence Lotto, who haven't been having a great success this year, seem to have all got it right on the day that they've been looking for, Paris-Roubaix.
Well, good for them. That should silence the Belgian critics. And driving that team car there was Wilfred Peters, the managing director of the Quick Step team, director sportif. And Tom, so far, will be feeling good. He looks good. He'll be a little concerned with the strength around him, I think. He won't feel totally confident he can ride them all the way. But he's pulling out now to 1:25, so this is the race right now.
Well, I would say for Tom Bonen, his feelings would be, if it stays together like this, the man he would be most concerned about would be Pipo Pozzato,
sure,
with a little bit of concern for Thor Hushovd. He will be less concerned about Leif Hoster, because he knows Hoster will have to win with a lone attack. And the same applies too to the man sitting in 6th position there in the orange jersey of Rabobank, because if Juan Antonio Fletcher wants to win this field, he too has to get off the front.
Hushovd is the rider in the black colours here, and that was the reason that Heinrich Hausler was riding so hard earlier on to try and pave the way for Hushovd, and it's worked. He's got Hushovd in front, so Hausler's done a great job today. I know to many of the Australians in Inverell, they'll be very upset about the fact he's not up here. He's back in this group right now, but he's paved the way, and if Hushovd wins, Hushovd will be buying the first glass of champagne for Heinrich tonight.
Well, that's the thing that you must always remember about the sport of professional cycling. It is a team sport. Even though it's an individual victor, you can't win a bike race at this level of the game, Phil, without opponent's got a problem.
Well, this is at the worst possible time. That was why he dropped back. He planned that.
Well, I'd seen him actually pressing his push-to-talk button on his radio as well, and he was probably setting up, look, I've got a little bit of a problem with the machine here. Let's get a quick bike check done. And it shouldn't be too long before Bonen gets himself back into the main field. And look at what an ultimate professional he was. He took the bottle out of his bike when he, when he got off it, and made sure that he had a bottle with him. It's so important in a race like this to make sure that you don't leave your bottle behind.
Well, that was definitely planned. We saw him drop back and chat. Then we saw him do another reply in his little microphone. So they were ready for that one. And it's all going to come good. Now, maybe that bike was damaged. Clearly, he did fall at some stage. We don't know where. Now he's got to race quickly back into the action. Won't be a problem.
No problem for Mr. Bonen there. He's back on the tail of the first team car. He's up alongside the race referee's car now. And the little hand by the race referee to Mr. Bonen said, please come by and make yourself at home.
Well, that'll pump the adrenaline for a little bit longer as we come inside 30 kilometres to go to the finish. No Norwegian, by the way, has ever made the top 3 in Paris-Roubaix. So there's a chance today for Thor Hushovd to write himself a little bit deeper into Norwegian fable, as these boys now are pulling away from the chase group.
Well, the leading group now, Phil, have got themselves 1 minute and 15 seconds over the front end of the main group, which is behind with George Hincapie, Roger Hammond, and anybody else who's missed out in Paris-Roubaix here this afternoon.
Well, one thing, it must be very nice to ride a clean bike after racing through the dust for 5 or 6 hours today for Bonen.
Maybe that's why he did it, just to psych out the opposition.
Who knows? He came back easy enough, didn't he?
He certainly did. I think he probably did have a slight mechanical problem with his machine, and the reason he did that, it could have been a broken spoke, it could have been a buckled wheel, and the quickest thing to do really is at this stage of the game is to have a bike change, especially if the mechanic is ready and primed, and he will have talked to his mechanic to get him ready to drop to the side of the road. And you saw how quickly that bike change happened. It probably didn't even cost him 6 or 7 seconds.
No, he was straight back in. That's how you do it. For all the youngsters back home who are hoping to one day ride this great race. But Tom Bonan now continues to drive on. He's almost holding back his energy, I feel, here. And one thing's for sure, these 6 men will not arrive in the velodrome together.
Well, he's come back up to the front of the group just to show everybody that he's here. And they've got themselves organised once again. They're now, Phil, coming into the town of Sizouin. And at 26 kilometres to go is the cobbles of Sizouin. Sizouin to Bourguel and Bourguel to Ouanin. And it's 2 sections again bolted together, making a distance of 2.5 kilometres. And I don't know if we will see it, but before we start the cobbles of Sizouin, which is just around the corner here, there's a small altar to the side of the road which is dedicated to Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle. He told me himself yesterday that this is the point where he made his winning move in the Paris-Roubaix that he won on his own. And a few years later, he was invited by the town of Sizouin to assist in the placing of that little memorial there.
Well, they love their cycling here. Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle won it back-to-back. And in fact, was in our hotel last night, and getting ready for his job here today. And
strangely enough, a man from the southern part of France who adored racing in the northern part.
27 kilometres left to ride. 6 riders now have built a 1-minute 15-second lead. It's been hard to open up, but it is opening up. And we're heading now to the section of Pava, which is 4 stars, and it's 2.4 kilometres with a slight little section in the middle of good road. Does that make it 8 stars?
I think that makes it 8 stars because of the length of it. There's not really that much smooth road in the middle. Well, it's going up all of the time, Phil. The gap over the main field, it's 1 minute and 25 seconds now.
But these are the big stars up front, and they're still riding on here as Tom Bonan tries to become the next man to win 3 of these races. Only Johan Museo, Octave Lapitz, Rick Van Looy, Eddie Merckx, Francesco Moser, and of course the 4-time winner Roger de Vlaming have ever won it 3 times. We're now looking the riders on sector 6 here now, a 4-star sector, 26.5 kilometres to go. This little sector is 1,300 metres, and then we go on to an 1,100-metre stretch, all sector 6. Now, if anybody is going to push home the advantage of the front 6, this is the place to do it.
And it's Juan Antonio Fletcher of Spain. Right behind him is Thor Hushovd in the black jersey of Cervelo Test Team. Juan Antonio Fletcher knows that he's got to crack Tom Bonan and Pipo Pozzato if he wants any chance of winning this bike race this afternoon, because although he's a great warrior from Spain, he's not the fastest man when it comes down to finishing on the track.
Well, he's really stamping on the pedals here now. The Flying of Flanders on the yellow flag there flies proudly. The gap to the chasers of 9 is 1:28. The gap to George Hincapie's group is now out to about 2.5 minutes. So I don't think there's any way back from that.
No, it's going to be a very difficult return to Roubaix for George Hincapie this afternoon and anybody else in that main field, because as far as I'm concerned, their chances have sadly gone out of the window. The winner from Paris-Roubaix theoretically will come from this leading group of 6, but at the moment, Phil, it could go any which way you like.
And we wouldn't wish it, but you know, this race can change its face around any corner here. The crowd have all moved, and what a crowd it is here now. We're not a long way away from the finishing line as the crow flies, but the zigzags of Paris-Roubaix makes it 25.5 kilometres.
Hushovd keeping a very close eye at the front end of the main field. Sector 6, 1.3 kilometres, 4 stars at Sizouin to Bourguel. And as you've said, a little bit of smooth section in the middle and then straight onto another 1.1 kilometre section. And this is the second group on the road. And I'd have to say, I think the firepower now has slightly disappeared from Team Saxo Bank.
Yeah, Matti Breschel leading Fabien Cancellara. They didn't look like the same riders. Here they are here. These are the poursuivants, the riders who are with the leaders, got split off. They're in a group of 9 riders, but they're not making any progress. In fact, to the contrary, they are losing ground, albeit a second at a time. Currently, 1:32 behind.
Well, for these men too, they won't give up. They will hope that something goes wrong in front at 25 kilometres to go now for the leaders. And
this is the little smooth section before we hit the cobbles again. Same sector 6.
Well, it's the same sector, sitting at the back there, just having a quick look at the bikes and the machines that these riders are using. I don't think there's any problem at all there for Thor Hushovd wearing the black jersey of Team Cervelo Test Team. In front of him, it's Johan van Sommeren, Juan Antonio Fletcher in orange, Pipo Pozzato in the blue and white. In front of him in blue and white, Tom Bonan. And going round the corner in first place is Leif Hoster. I wonder if Leif Hoster is going to put the hammer down on the next section of cobblestones, which has got a slight incline in it, the section at Camphin-en-Pévèle.
Well, he's not afraid to do a little bit of the pacemaking, considering he's going to have the benefit of surprise, but not seeing a lot of work being done by the man in black, Thor Hushoff, at the moment.
Hushoff playing the waiting game here. He knows that if he can stay in this group all the way to the finish, he's got a very good chance of taking out the sprint. After all, we're looking at a high-speed train there. This is the Thalissam, that's the Belgian high-speed train, making its way from Brussels, maybe to the United Kingdom.
Brussels to the UK at a steady 300 kilometres an hour. As we look at these boys now, they'll be happy with 30 kilometres an hour right now as they come on to another sector of cobblestones. But they're slowly but surely nosing the way ahead of the field as they set fair now for the stadium in Roubaix, a packed stadium which is totally mesmerised here in the stadium at the big screen, wondering just who or when will the move come. Hoster now has gone to the back of the group here.
This is the second part now, Phil, of section number 6 to go at Borgel to Ouanin, 1.1 kilometres. Not such a bad section of cobblestones. Leif Hoster sitting at the back. Just in front of him is Tom Bonen. Bonen, I think, has been given the order now by the team to calm it, my boy. Wait. We don't have to use all of our energy. You don't have to be the dominant factor. You don't have to split this race apart, because your chances are pretty high on the finishing velodrome. And a little push there by Leif Hoster, saying to Tom Bonen, mate, you can ride in front of me.
Well, it's the long, lanky rider here of Johan van Summeren, who is one of the workhorses in the world of cycling. Well known by Cadel Evans to help him when he's in difficulty in the Tour de France. Now Hoster's relying on him here. He's got tremendous form. He's ridden the Tour de France 4 times. He's finished every one. He's a real workhorse.
And a great character for the team, and he's always on form throughout the season. He just loves banging his head at the front end of any group like this. And now he isn't even thinking about himself, and that's a strange thing to try and understand about many of these professional bike riders who work as team helpers. They get it into their mind that they will dish out the pain to everybody else in the hope of assisting their teammates.
The flags there indicating a pretty strong crosswind still blowing here, as Van Summeren, those long legs, just going around like the Moulin we've just seen. These are the riders that I'd worry very much about. Number 161 there, Pozzato. Just what is he thinking? Everybody's isolated now, and they're all trying to work out each other's tactics.
Well, Fletcher looked pretty good too, because Fletcher was ticking over the pedals very rapidly as they come off that section of cobblestones. Now just 5 remaining.
So 23 kilometres to go. We've got 6 riders in the lead. It's beginning to look as though these may be the ones fighting out the finish in Roubaix.
Well, Frederic Guédon has come to the front of the chasers at 1.5 minutes. Manuel Quinziato. Firepower now, I think, Phil, has disappeared from Team Saxo Bank, but they have been part of the race today. They set out the tactics. They took the race by the horns on the way into Orchy, and that's when they split the race and damned George Hincapie to a second group a bit further back. And here they really are paying, because I think Fabian Cancellara has hit the wall.
Well, you can't say he went out in style. He certainly did that. He really raced today. It didn't work out for him. But you're right, now it's all over for Fabian. So perhaps he hasn't really come back yet from his sickness in the Tour of California, but he certainly gave this his best shot. Former winner of this event as well.
I think he probably scared 1 or 2 people too with the form that he showed in the early part, because he was responsible for splitting the main field on the road into Orchy, and now he's going to be responsible for trying to get himself to the outskirts of Roubaix and onto the velodrome.
He's riding with Klostergaard there. In fact, the rider was in the breakaway all day today. There's that crosswind flag showing us it's still quite breezy here. But they're falling away now on sector 6 of the pavé, as what will be 7 riders continue to make progress. Meanwhile, just when and who will make a move up here? They can't go to a finish as 6.
I expect the move to come from either Juan Antonio Fletcher in the orange or from Leif Hoster in the red and black, because those are the 2 riders who are dreaming about winning this race. Here is Team Katusha. That's Sergio Passani. Now, this is quite interesting, because Sergio Passani used to be a team manager with Quick-Step.
Oh dear.
And he's jumped across to join Team Katusha, so he will have a fairly good insight into the tactical thinkings of Wilfred Peters and, of course, Tom Bonen.
Well, it's a Russian-supported team, Katusha, on the block this year. They brought big names like Robin McHugh in the Australian, He doesn't like Paris-Roubaix. Robbie prefers to win other races. But this one today with Pozzato suits him down to the ground, and he knows now he's got himself in with a winning chance. He's never been anywhere near the podium in this race before, but his form is undoubted right now.
Fletcher over on the left-hand side, taking on board his drink. It's so important to keep yourself topped up. Funny the way the world of professional cycling is, because the man on the front, Pipo Pozzato, who now rides, of course, for Team Katusha, the Russian team, was formerly a teammate of Tom Boonen for many years, and it was with great joy that Tom Boonen saw his teammate win Milan-San Remo, and now on the road to Roubaix, they're enemies.
Well, they've been racing for 6 hours now as we fly over the top of the express train. I think it's actually going Brussels down to Paris on that track, as we now find the riders just over on the ridge there. Last chance to take perhaps a drink, perhaps a little bit of food, because they know now we're only 21 kilometers to go and still some rough cobbles to come, including the Carrefour de l'Arbre, which is a brute. Then that may be where this race is decided.
Well, it's a very difficult section of cobbles, Phil. That's Hendrik Redant in the team car of Silence Lotto, himself a former great rider in races like the Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix. And he's giving his advice to his men at the back of the group, and he is in a good situation here because he's got 2 riders in this group. Of course, one is the outright lead, and that's number 41, Leif Hoster, and he's probably trying to impart to Leif Hoster just exactly how he can win the Paris-Roubaix this year. And for me, if Hoster wants to win, Phil, he's got to go on this section of cobbles at Canfin-en-Pévèle, or the next section of cobbles, the Carrefour de l'Arbre.
It's a brave man that gambles everything so near the finish of the biggest one-day race in the world, which every cyclist wants to win. The chasers have slipped away. They're almost 2 minutes back now. This is the battle for the first place today in Paris-Roubaix. Unless they start finessing and stop the pacemaking, then, of course, they'll let others back in.
Well, it's just in excess of 20 kilometers to go. There was a little move on the left-hand side of the road. It looked like Thor Hushovd diving across there. There's the official banner indicating 20 to go. And in a little while, Phil, there's a left-hand turn, and that is the cobblestones of Canfin-en-Pévèle.
And that'll be taking us on to Sector 5. 5 sectors left to go. The last one, forget. It's just a little bit of a smooth road approaching the stadium. Just a reminder that the riders were in Paris-Roubaix. We're looking now at a move here. We've slipped down here as the riders are now trying to liven up the chase a little bit, because the last time check was almost 2 minutes. And we don't forget that we're now only 19 kilometers from the finish. The gap officially 1 minute and 50 seconds on this chase group.
Well, this is the face of Sylvain Chavanel trying to get himself across the gap, and I think he's seeing that disappear away from him because he hasn't managed to open up the gap, and he will stop the chase here now and leave the advantage to these men at the front, who have now come on to section number 5 to go. This is the section of cobbles at Canfin-en-Pévèle. Once they get around the corner here, it starts to drag up slightly, and interesting to note that Boonen has slipped to the back of this group, maybe into a position where he can observe the way the other riders are handling it. And right behind him, his arch enemy and arch rival and former teammate, Pipo Pozzato.
250 kilometers have been ridden now of this race. 240 kilometers rather have been ridden, which is 150 miles they've pedaled. It's taken them 6 hours. Many of us couldn't do that in a motor car, never mind over some of the worst roads in northern France, as we're now watching these riders try to pull it together. I'm just thinking, Paul, whether the big rivalry between Pozzato and Boonen might cost them both the win.
Well, Boonen said he was just going to ignore that. He put it down last week to the fact that he wasn't upset at all by Pozzato following around. He said, I just couldn't get rid of him. So maybe today he will try and get rid of him. Boonen, for me, is in an ideal situation here, Phil, because he's a great sprinter. He knows how to win the sprint on the track here. He has absolutely no reason to win alone, but he does have to be very attentive to make sure that somebody like Fletcher or
Leif Hoster
doesn't get off the front.
It's funny, it's an age thing, you know.
Oh, thank you. Well, I must be catching it off you.
Thank you very much. Here we are, 1,800 meters, the 4-star section of Canfin-en-Pévèle now, as the riders will have to hit this hard, ride it hard. Anything can happen. What they don't want now is to hear that back tyre clatter on the rim. because they get the sort of puncture here, which is not something going in the tyre, it's a pinch. They call it a snake bite because it's the rim bites the back of the inner tube of the tyre and it makes two little impressions like a snake bite, and that's what they fear here.
Well, I think the way we're seeing these riders handle Canfin and Pavel would be an indication to me, Phil, that somebody is going to lay down the hammer on the Pavé de l'Arbre, which comes around about 2 kilometers after the end of this section.
18 to go.
Van Sommeren is absolutely sacrificing himself here this afternoon. He's doing all of the work for his man Leif Hoste. He's trying to set something up, and in fact I have a feeling that's where Leif Hoste, who's currently riding in 4th position there, will try and ride away from the pack. And why not the man from Spain sitting in 2nd wheel there, Juan Antonio Fletcher? He is dreaming of winning this bike race, as he has done for many years.
Well, Van Sommeren, perhaps it's time to remind ourselves, Paul, finished 8th in Paris-Roubaix last year, so he knows the course. He's got his tail up now. That's by far his best ever finish. And if he stays with this breakaway, he'll improve by at least 2 places. But he's riding totally, as always, we have to admit, unselfishly. He's riding for Leif Hoste, who might well be planning his move on the next sector of 5 stars.
Well, Pozzato sitting at the back, looking at the rear wheel of Tom Boonen, just as he did 7 days ago in the Tour of Flanders. Well, Canfin en Pavel is over and out. That's the end of section number 5.
4 sectors of pavé to go. As we see these riders clear, it's around 2 minutes the gap, and there goes a little bit of an attack from Fletcher. The gap officially at 1 minute 30, and now Fletcher is trying to stretch the breakaway.
Well, Fletcher waited until after they'd come off the cobblestones there in a hope of surprising anybody, but look how attentive Mr. Boonen from Belgium was. Straight across the gap onto the wheel of Juan Antonio Fletcher and Johan van Sommeren. 2 kilometers to go now, Phil, to the Pavé de l'Arbre.
So the break has reformed 17 kilometers from the finish, and the chase group is not out of it yet.
Well, that was a nice little flurry of activity there coming from Juan Antonio Fletcher, but it's putting everything back together. Thor Hushovd sitting at the back of the group now. He can be attentive. I was very impressed by the reaction there of Tom Boonen. He was sitting at the back of the group waiting to see if anybody would make a move, and as soon as the move was made, even though he wasn't on the wheel of Fletcher, he went straight across it. A little bit further back down the road, finally Sylvain Chavanel has managed to get himself away from that group that he was with, and he's covered there by Heinrich Hausler.
The teammate to the end here, Heinrich Hausler, he won't help him, but I'm a bit surprised Chavanel himself is trying to cross the gap. Unless he actually believes he can't reach the leaders, he won't want to take Hausler across and strengthen the support for Thor Hushovd and against his own man. Now what's gone? There's a crash there, completely overridden that one.
Fletcher and Leif Hoste have gone down there, filling that corner, and that was a wild corner going round there, going into the corner. There you can see Fletcher decked it straight over the top, goes Leif Hoste. Johan van Sommeren is there as well, but not involved in that crash at all was big Tom Boonen. Now Fletcher back up onto his bike, trying to get himself going again. These cobblestones are the cobblestones in this region we call the pavé bleu, the blue cobblestones, and they are blue and very, very shiny indeed, and that is why that man has gone down in the dry. They are treacherous.
Well, no sooner do you enter the Carrefour de l'Arbre, and this happens here. I did say around every corner there is a problem. Hushovd himself really swung wide there, and it almost got him down as well. But that's why this race is officially not over till the man salutes the crowd in Roubaix. It can happen around any corner.
Well, I tell you what, I've seen those cobblestones. I've ridden those cobblestones. They are extremely scary. Leif Hoste now caught out in that accident. It wasn't his fault. It was, in fact, the man from Spain, Fletcher, who went down first, is trying to ride himself back into the event here. That looks like Pipo Pozzato riding across the gap, but at the front, it's now taking up the pressure with Tom Boonen and Thor Hushovd. The 3 men behind are trying to scramble back into Paris-Roubaix.
Well, they're on the Carrefour de l'Arbre now, 5 stars, vicious enough, but you saw how it had a bite in it there. And now Hushovd, who almost fell, recovered well, and the God of Thunder has raced up behind Tom Boonen. But I'll tell you what, when Tom Boonen hit the front here, there was an enormous cheer in the stadium in Roubaix.
Well, the Hushoff has gone down as well.
Hushoff has crashed as well.
This is the Pavé de l'Arbre. That's what it's all about. It is a defining moment, this section of cobblestones. He went round there a little bit too wide, straight into the barriers, and he now is down, and he will have gone down right in front of Pippo Pozzato. Pozzato is trying to get across to Tom Bonen. Bonen does not need to attack in a race like this, Phil, but now he is on his own. He's got to take all of the risks, and I think there are no French people in the crowd here this afternoon. They must all be Flemish.
Well, there's been oohs and ahs and cheers, and now Tom Bonen is free to fly. Those big legs can pump on the pedals, and it's 15 kilometres and a bit more to go to the finish. But I would think that Hushoff will be up as fast as he can, and the strength at hand, because the others are still chasing from the previous crash.
And not too far behind was Pippo Pozzato. Here is Pippo Pozzato now trying to get himself up to the wheel of Tom Bonen. He's trying to get all of the Flandrians out of the way. He's
here
looking through the cloud to see what is the difference between myself and Big Tommeke.
Tom Bonen, he's the pin-up boy of Belgian sport, not just Belgian cycling here. And he's now pushing on through an incredible crowd. And look at the Belgian flags. These are the flags of Flanders here. These people speak Flemish, not French, and they're looking at a Flemish rider burst forth.
The gap is not very much. It's not much more, Phil, than 5 or 6 seconds to Pippo Pozzato. He wasn't involved in the crash. He managed to get around it. He was delayed by it. Bonen around the corner now. He's got a section of smooth road for around about 50 metres. Then it's a left-hand turn, and he'll have to go right the way across the rest of the Pavé de l'Arbre, the cobblestones of Gruzon.
It's a bizarre pursuit across the roads of northern France on Easter Sunday now. Bonen, Pozzato, Hushoff. There's no daylight, or there is daylight between them all. There's no way they can help each other now. It is simply their strength that will get them out of this mess.
Well, poor old Juan Antonio Fletcher, he was the man who attacked before the Pavé de l'Arbre, and when he went onto it, he was unable to keep his bicycle upright. Now the little groups are starting to form. This is the second part of the Pavé de l'Arbre, and this is Gruzon, and Tom Bonen knows he's got to lay down the law now. He knows that not very far behind him is Pippo Pozzato, but he's done what he couldn't do last week in the Tour of Flanders. He's put a gap between himself and the Italian, and he has to consolidate.
And he made a friend of the Queen of the Classics to do it now. She took everybody out. 14 kilometres to go. Pozzato in pursuit of Tom Bonen. They were once on the same team. They would once have helped each other. Now they both want to win this great race.
Well, this is going to be a pursuit all the way to the finish. 14.5 kilometres of racing. Johan van Summeren now sacrificing himself once again for Leif Hoster, who is in his wheel. And, of course, they're dragging along for the party Thor Hushoff. The race situation is Tom Bonen at 10 seconds, Pippo Pozzato, and a little bit further back you've got that group of 3, and already, Phil, at 1 minute and 5 seconds, Juan Antonio Fletcher.
Whoa, and that's not what you do. You do not run out in front of some of the greatest bike riders in the world here just to get a better view. They've had enough problems of their own today. This is the chaser, Filippo Pozzato, another popular personage in the world of cycling anyway, stage winner in the Tour de France. He's now trying to close the gap to Bonen.
Well, Bonen is off the end of the cobblestones, and in a couple of seconds' time, so too will be Pippo Pozzato as we go a bit further back down the road. This is the chase group of Sylvain Chavanel starting that same section of cobbles. So Chavanel is probably looking at 1 minute and 45 seconds to his team leader, Bonen.
And he's not even worried about catching him now. He's racing for himself now. Chavanel, he's been given his head. He's towing along with him at the moment, Heinrich Hausler. Heinrich himself must know by now, because of the race radios, that Hushoff has fallen and is in trouble. He is trying to get back with Fletcher and Hoster to the leaders.
Well, there are 2 sections of cobblestones left, and one of them really is not that complicated for the riders. It's the one from Willems to Em, and that's a section of cobblestones at 1.4 kilometres in length. But it still is going to be a massive pursuit at the front of the bike race. Sylvain Chavanel there is looking to pull himself back in to what will be his best ever performance in Paris-Roubaix.
So the leaders are now spread across the cobblestones of northern France. It's looking at the moment, it's advantage Bonen.
Well, Bonin off the cobblestones, and now he's out of a Gruzon, and he's getting himself tied into for what is going to be a very long individual time trial for him. He knows that not very far behind is this man, Pippo Pozzato. The official time gap that we're being given, Phil, is 10 seconds. It is a real chase for two great champions of the sport, and Pozzato, in fact, was not on the ground at that crash. He was simply delayed, but Tom Bonin saw the opportunity and put the hammer down.
They're both doing the ride of their life now, the time trial of their life. A 10-second gap between this ace from Belgium and the equally great ace from Italy. As the cameras pull back, we will see the difference between the two as the stadium gets closer and closer. But with 12 kilometers to go, as we've seen, anything can still happen.
This is an amazing pursuit at the end of 250 kilometers in their legs and 260 kilometers, the total distance of the race. Pozzato doesn't look like a man who's going to give up this race too easily this afternoon, Phil, and he knows he's got to chase back to Tom Bonin. He's been dreaming of winning Paris-Roubaix. Hushoft has seen that he's got the legs, and he's leaving Van Sommer, and Leif Hoster must have been pretty hurt in that crash because they are not able to follow. Hoster there, number 41.
Well, it looks as though Van Summeren is the one that's missing right now as Hoster tries to push on. He's driving at the front, but it's going to be a desperate finish here. It's Van Summeren just in front of Hoster, trying to put his captain back into this race. But this is the rider now who is breaking all of the pressure at the front and trying desperately to blaze the trail for a third time into Roubaix.
Well, I tell you, this man today is really taking a massive risk, and he's sitting very high on the handlebars. He's getting lots of wind into his chest there, but he's riding with the gusto of a real Flandrian. He's looking for a third victory in Paris-Roubaix. It's not on the cards yet because he's still looking at 10 seconds ahead of Pippo Pozzato, who himself is a rider in great form this season.
Time checks across the screen like confetti now. 10 seconds of Pozzato, 51 seconds of Hushoff, Fletcher, Host and Van Summeren. And then the rest still trying to repair from behind. But coming up from behind at the moment is Sylvain Chavanel and Heinrich Hausler. It looks to me as though Hoster is really stretched to the end now as he's trying to hold on to the super rider here, Johan Van Summeren.
I've got to tell you, I have a feeling Leif Hoster hurt himself when he went down there, but Phil, this is Paris-Roubaix. You do get hurt, you do fall, you have to bounce back into the event as Hausler looks over his shoulder there to see what's going on. The gap starting to be prized open now, a fraction by Tom Bonin to 13 seconds. It's 2 minutes and 10 seconds still for Hausler and Sylvain Chavanel, but they're looking here to ride for glory.
But they might well bring in Fletcher into the sights here if they keep this sort of pressure on, because now there's no hiding behind anybody. It is all your own work, as if it hasn't been all day for 6 hours and 15 minutes. And now Tom Bonin here shortly will be in the streets, which will look pretty similar to Belgium because he won't be far from the borders, and just 10 kilometers to go.
Not very far away now from the railway crossing where a few years ago Leif Hoster was disqualified for going through the red light of the railway crossing. Let's hope that it's not red or yellow here this afternoon, and this man can ride away and keep building on his advantage. It is now 15 seconds to Pippo Pozzato on the race official radio time check.
He's gone out. There is the railroad crossing, and that caused the problems. And now at 15 seconds and 10 kilometers left, the big Tomica Bonin is pulling clear of his friend and his pursuer.
Well, this is a performance that Tom Bonin does not need to do here this afternoon, Phil, but I think he's trying to prove something to himself, and he's trying to prove something to the Belgian public, that this man is a great champion. The race referee there in the red car is right behind him, the neutral car tight up behind to make sure that they're not shortening the gap between Tom Bonin and Pippo Pozzato. We're waiting now to get official visual confirmation of the distance between those two riders, and Phil, that doesn't look like 10 seconds to me.
Well, it's down to 14 according to the timekeepers, and 43 to the group of Hushoft, Van Summeren, Hoster, and then just behind will be Fletcher, then 2:10 to the chase that we've seen of Heinrich Hausler and Sebastian Chavanel. Well, here comes the time checks one after another. Now everybody's excited, including the team cars here. This is big Van Summeren for a change at the back, and Hushoff puts his head down and drives on. This is a dramatic finish to the 107th Paris-Roubaix.
Well, a little chat coming there from Jean-Paul Van Poppel from Team Cervelo, giving a little bit of information to his man in that group there to say, they're only just in front. Dig deep, my boy. We can pull this one still back out of the bag. You don't give up in a race like Paris-Roubaix. The spread is not very much. 13 seconds to Pozzato, 43 seconds to the group of chasers with Hushoff and Leif Hoster. But this man today is riding like a man possessed. He's not too far now from the final section of cobblestones as he swings left.
Where after 250 kilometres do you find this pace to lift it half a kilometre an hour? That's what you've got to do now to bring back the leader. And Tom Boonen knows now if he can just hold this pressure, he will win the race for a third time and the second in succession.
But he hasn't yet cracked Pippo Pozzato. He is putting everything on the line here this afternoon, Tom Boonen. Pozzato in second position on the road is still looking fairly calm on his bike. He's still got a fairly good position. The pedaling style indicates there's still some energy left in there, and he's trying to battle his way across that 15-second gap. But if Boonen can hold this for another 4 or 5 seconds, the big man from Belgium could finally have win number 3 in the bag.
A hint of sun by the shadow on the road there of Filippo Pozzato as we cut back to the front. The flashes on the cuffs of his jersey indicate a former World Road Race champion. Tom Boonen, though, is heading for his third Paris-Roubaix. He's chipped off 2 seconds. He's out to 16 seconds now. He just grits his teeth and tries to shut the pain out of his brain as he races towards the final sector of cobbles of note.
This is it. This is the final section.
So there's the split, and it's 16 seconds now. On the right is Filippo Pozzato trying to get on terms with Tom Boonen, but Boonen is just holding it now, and the 3 chasers, Hushoff and Summer and Hoster, are at 49.
This is the section of M, and I remember many years ago, I think 1983, Henny Kuiper almost lost his victory in Paris-Roubaix when he was in a similar situation to this. He flicked across the road from left to right, and his back tyre popped off the wheel, and then all of a sudden he was standing at the side of the road. Let's hope that doesn't happen to Tom Boonen here this afternoon. Is putting in one of the most impressive performances I've witnessed for a man who's made his reputation as one of the top sprinters in the world.
Well, by my reckoning, this will be Tom Boonen's 100th victory of his career, which started in 2002. What a sweet way to spend Easter Sunday now in France, with Belgium just over the road. He's just levering on those pedals now. He's got nothing left in those legs except determination.
When you're in a situation like this at 7 kilometers to go and you can see a third victory and the Queen of the Classics ahead of you, you can push the pain barrier a little bit further ahead, a little bit further all of the time, because you know that this pain is a sweet pain. It's a pain that could bring you a great victory, and for me this will be one of the most dramatic victories that Tom Boonen has got if he can get to Roubaix ahead of this man, number 2 on the road, wearing 161, Pippo Pozzato. And isn't that ironic that he is a former teammate?
It is indeed, and Pozzato racing even so to his finest ever finish, if it's to be second here. Little bit of a problem for Van Summeren now. He's been such a sterling workhorse for Hoster, who is managing to hang on to Thor Hushoff here. They are racing for third position at the moment. No Norwegian has ever been on the podium in this race, and Hushoff is trying for third right now ahead of Hoster, who has never finished in the top 3 either.
Well, Hushoff getting a second win there, and probably a final belief that he can pull himself back into this bike race, and if he can get to Tom Boonen and get onto the podium, get onto the velodrome here, anything can happen. Whoa, as Boonen goes around that corner there, he's taking all of the risks. He knows every time he slows down in one of these corners, he could lose himself a second or more. This is the end of sector 2 to go of 1,400 metres, and that is the section of M. There's only one more section of cobbles left, Phil, and I have to say, as you said a little bit earlier, it's somewhat ornamental.
Yes, they're ceremonial, those cobbles, and it will be ceremony if Boonen reaches them here. This is Pozzato flying the flag for the new team, Katusha, as he comes onto the sector of cobbles at the end as well. But this is still a one-on-one fight, and there's no room for a problem for Tom Boonen or for Pozzato, because the boys behind would snap them up as easy as that.
Well, the television is telling us 18 seconds. The race referee is telling me 15 seconds. It is still very close indeed. Pozzato has got to keep his morale right up there now, a little bit further back.
This.
Hoster, who was in difficulty a few moments ago, has fought himself back into some kind of form here. And that's the way Paris-Roubaix is. It's up and down. It's lose and fight back. And that's what's happening to this man here. He's starting to ride himself back into the race. Still ploughing a lonely furrow, though, is the man who's created his career as a sprinter on his own, Tom Boonen.
Tom continues to ride here to get his third victory. He's now heading to the stadium. There's still 6 kilometres to go. He knows now, though, if he doesn't have a problem, he'll run out the winner.
Well, he has to do that, but he's got to get to the finish ahead of this man who is still only looking for 15 or 16 seconds now. When you translate that into distance, Phil, that is not much more than 250 meters. He can almost reach out and touch Tom Boonen, but he can't close down that final little bit. What he may well be able to take advantage of is once he gets into the town of M, there's a slight uphill incline, which in this run into the finish may well advantage the Italian in second position on the road. But I think the closer Boonen gets to the finish, the more he's going to believe in himself. And the time check's starting to open. 24 seconds now.
That should be enough now. Another cheer just gone up in the stadium at 24 seconds for Tom Boonen. He proudly rides #1 as last year's winner. As he now heads towards the stadium, there's a straight when he'll swing into the centre of the road down the cobblestones. Then he'll come off and he'll swing into the stadium and then wait for the noise as he enters that stadium. Inside 5 kilometres. It sounds less if I say inside 3 miles to go.
3 miles would sound an awful lot better to Tom Boonen. It's 24 seconds the advantage. He's going through now the town of M, and there is the official 5 kilometres to go. When he gets into M, he'll take a right-hand turn and then a left-hand sweeper and start that little drag uphill. And the way he's pedaling here, I still think he's got the energy in those legs of his. It's a strange, gangly style when you see Tom Boonen riding on his own. There's the right-hand sweeper into the very town centre of M. In about 100 metres time, he'll take a left-hander, and that's the final incline of Paris-Roubaix this year.
Well, these will be big moments for Belgium cycling now. Quick Step, the team that will give Patrick Lefevere his 10th victory individually in this event. And how many team wins might it be? Well,
it could very well be 16, because he's been winning this race since 1993 as a team, and it will be his 10th individual victory since 1993 as well. And that is an incredible record for this team, which over the years has borne many names, either Team Mappé, Team Domo Farm Frieds, and now more recently Team Quickstep. But this has been their race. They've made this race their goal. Psychologically coming in, they're coming into this race as warriors and dominators. And that, for me, is the picture of a real warrior of Flanders.
He's never looked over his shoulder once, and yet he knows that Filippo Pozzato has been chasing him down. But he must also know, inch by inch, he is prizing open at that time gap. Nearly half a minute now. The determination written all over the face of Tom Boonen as we swing back now to Pozzato.
Advantage, because he can see the vehicles behind Tom Boonen. He can see in the distance the lights on the back of the cars, and he's dreaming to catch those lights, to get to those lights, to get to the slipstream of Tom Boonen here in front, because if he can, he knows he's got a chance of winning Paris-Roubaix. But 30 seconds now, Phil, in actual distance is around about half a kilometre.
Interminable moments for Boonen, these. Ever since he got his chance, as they fell behind him, he held his bike upright and he pushed on. And now the rider with #1 is pushing on. He'll take a little glance across. He's done that at the board. It'll tell him just on half a minute. He must know in 3.5 kilometres, half a minute will take some bridging.
Well, the closer he gets to the finish, the bigger his chance. In fact, the chasers behind are starting to probably get to the slipstream of this man, because at the moment, behind those 3 chasers, Leif Hoster, Thor Hushoff and Johan van Summeren are only about half a minute behind this man as well. But for Boonen, once he gets to the top, Phil, of the climb, he knows he can cruise downhill into the outskirts of Roubaix. The distance is between the first man and these riders in 3rd, 4th and 5th position is now only 50 seconds.
This is the Norwegian-Belgian tandem here racing for 3rd place, unless they can reach Pozzato and spoil his perfect day. We are looking down now on the figure of Filippo Pozzato here, 27 seconds behind Tom Bonan, and 2 riders chasing Pozzato. His second place is not safe, but I feel as though Bonan's first place is.
3 kilometres to go for Tom Bonan, now wearing number 1 on his back. He's almost got to the top of the Côte de M, the climb of M, which isn't really a climb in itself, but it's a very nasty false flat after 259 kilometres in the saddle. Bonan now starting to pick it up once again. He would be very happy to be able to read that line in French, tête de la course, the head of the bike race. And now he's away from M and he's on the flat now. The next thing he will be seeing, Phil, in about a kilometre's time is a final ornamental section of cobblestones in the city of Roubaix, and then it will be the Flamme Rouge, and then the stadium packed with Flemish supporters will receive their champion.
You bet your life. They're all standing up here watching the big screen now. It's a packed house in Roubaix. The only classic that finishes on a banked velodrome left in the world. And now it is a Belgian cyclist, Tom Bonan, again, who is heading down towards the finishing line. And I don't think anybody's going to get him either. And when he does get there, he'll be the 53rd Belgian rider to win this race. Not quite so. It'll be the 53rd time the country has won this race. And for him, it'll be his 3rd.
Well, for him, it will be a glorious victory as well to ride around here completely and utterly on your own. He now knows he's got 30 seconds. Tornado Tom Friches, the big sign at the road, the side of the road there, that from the Belgians. The Belgians are very well renowned for their Friches. The distance between Tom Bonan and this second, third group on the road is now, Phil, gone to the 1 minute and 2 second mark. Thor Hushovd may have dreamed of winning Paris-Roubaix this afternoon, but the Pavé de l'Arbre, the Carrefour de l'Arbre, had something special to say about this race once again.
It's been a great race. It's been a great race by the riders who have hit this front and torn each other to shreds with a little help from the cobblestones. There's the switch. We now go down the centre of the road. These are the ceremonial cobbles, and they're just at 0.3 of a kilometre, 300 metres. Then we'll turn right into the stadium. Then we'll stop while you listen to the roar.
Well, Bonan is about to come off that 300-metre section of ornamental cobblestones right in the very heart of the city of Roubaix. Ranked only a 1-star, but for Tom Bonan this afternoon, Phil, this is a 5-star entrance into the velodrome. And listen to the crowd. He's not even here yet.
He makes his way to the gate. There's no more cobbles in this year's Queen of the Classics. She's done her best to ruin it again for some, and she's succeeded. But not for this man. As he heads into the stadium now, Tom Bonan is about to start 1.5 laps of honour. As he swings onto the velodrome, he'll keep low in the bowl and he'll race round to the bell, and it must be the best sound in world cycling.
Well, I have to say, Tom Bonan started this race as the outright favourite for the victory this afternoon. There was nobody given as many stars to win this bike race as Tom Bonan was. But it is so difficult when you're the #1 favourite to come up with the goods, because everybody makes their race on you. But this afternoon, Tom Bonan has raced against himself or against the cobblestones. And I think this is a very happy Belgian bike rider.
Well, he's riding down the back straight. Pozzato is not in yet. As he comes round, he can wave to everybody. He could almost shake the hands of Pozzato because he's just entering the stadium as Tom goes back past the gate. But now it's all over as he comes into the home straight. Tom Bonan will win this race for a 3rd time and the 2nd year back-to-back. He's sprinting even to show off his true colours as he comes home now, and just joining the track is Filippo Pozzato, the former world champion. Now I have 3 wins. Next year he could join Roger de Vlaming as a 4-time winner. There's Pozzato.
Pozzato still has a lap to go. Tom Bonan made a phenomenal chase over the last few kilometres. Congratulations from an ex-teammate there. Pozzato will run out in 2nd place for Italy here this afternoon, but how very much he was hoping that it was going to be 1st.
The other 3 riders are also on the track, but they're just half a lap behind Pozzato. They're not going to damage him at all. He knows it now. The job is done out on the course. He's coming round. The average speed, 41 kilometres an hour over roads like that. 6 hours and 15 minutes they've been riding. Filippo Pozzato, the best ever finish for him in Paris-Roubaix. And he was beaten by a stronger man on the day, but he's a very, very worthy 2nd place rider.
Well, also on the track now, on the far side, I can see Johan van Sommeren is leading out the sprint for Thor Hushovd, and then third place there is Leif Hoster. It should really be a formality for the God of Thunder to get himself onto the podium, because he is the fastest sprinter of these three.
Well, he'll have to watch Leif Hoster, but Thor Hushovd is a very strong finisher. But again, the Belgians are inspired here in sight of their own country. But Thor Hushovd becomes the first Norwegian ever to step up on the podium here in Paris-Roubaix. So Hushovd has crossed the line third, Hoster is in fourth place, and van Sommeren an excellent fifth place, his highest ever finish in this classic. What an extraordinary race it has been today, and Fletcher, who got laid low by the crash out on the cobblestones, will have to be content with sixth place this time around. This great Spanish cyclist who can mix it with the best of the Northern Europeans. As he goes down the track, a rather lonely and solitary figure here, but even so, sixth place and no sign of anybody else coming into the stadium right now. But the next two in should be Heinrich Hausler and also Sebastian Chavanel. Already the crowds are mobbing Tom Bonen down there in the centre as the others proudly applaud the arrival of Fletcher here into sixth place. 2 minutes 13 seconds, his time gap in the end. Here's the battle now for what will be the seventh place finish, and Heinrich Hausler, a very good finisher indeed, might well want to try and take this one. He has a habit normally of jumping away, approaching the line. Now he's going to have to use a sprint if he's going to beat Sebastian Chavanel. They go through with 1 lap to go. Chavanel looks content to make the pace down the back straight. Well, that will play into the hands, I think, of Heinrich, who will please everybody in Inverell in Australia, because if he does get 7th place, heck, that's not bad for a man who openly admitted he came here to work for Thor Hushovd to win the day, and he shouldn't be too unhappy that Hushovd has finished in 3rd place. Not everybody can win, let's face it. He lies off Chavanel just long enough to get the revs up in those legs and then pushes home. No reaction. Sebastian knows when he's beaten, and Heinrich Hausler comes home here for a tremendous 7th place. In the frame all day long, Sebastian Chavanel equally so. Remember, they had to break away from the field on the run-in to claim 7th and 8th. Time ticks on, minutes, so there's a 5% delay, and then even if you cross the line, they don't list you on the result. That's the rule of these events. You must be in the finishing line within 5% of the winner's time. So that's about 16 or 17 minutes, a very rough calculation. We're still waiting to see the first American in. As we look at the result now, Tom Bonen, 6 hours 15, 47 second Pazzato, 1:17 to Hushovd, and Hoster, 1:22 van Sommeren, Fletcher at 2:14, completing the top 6. We look down on the velodrome here now. Looks as though there's nobody in it, but believe me, it is as full as it can be. As the bells go here, down by the finishing line, which is the far right of our picture there, as we look again at Tom Bonen. This is Tom Bonen now just kicking once more, inspired by the fact he was being drawn to the finish, turning on the show for the crowd here as he wins Paris-Roubaix for a 3rd time. This one, I think, though, far and away his best ever win. He was aggressive throughout, and in the end he had to do it his way because he had no teammates left to help him. So Bonen takes the flag back home to Belgium as a 3-time winner of Paris-Roubaix. The riders he joins, by the way, are Museo, Lapitz, Van Looy, Eddy Merckx and Francesca Moser. This is Kinziato, so he will come home in 9th place. He must have slipped away as well towards the end. And this will be the battle for 10th place. Sadly, still no signs here of the American George Hincapie. That's Frédéric Guédon in the white on the front, once a winner here on the track himself. And as they all open up for the line now, this will be Brescheli, I think, who's making the line, sprint for the line. But as they race up towards the line, he just gets it on the line, Matty Breschel. 3 riders in, so we've got about 14 riders home at the moment, and another 5 on course, being led around here by Roger Hammond of the United Kingdom. Himself a top 3 finisher in the past, 3rd to be precise. So he'll know exactly how his teammate Thor Hushoff feels tonight, as Hammond himself has put in another great showing in this classic, as he so often does. George Hincapie is in a big bunch of riders now, but he's not interested in the sprint finish, as we watch Roger Hammond try to come here, just creeping into the top 16 or 17 riders up to the line. Just misses out in that sprint there. And the rider who beat him was Kevin Van Impe of Quickstep, Tom Bonen's team. Now, are we going to see ending of the sprint? No. As we look at the result again, the top 9 riders completed there by Quinziato, and Matti Breschel taking the top 10 at 5:29.
You had a lot of pressure on you this week because I think all of Belgium wanted you to win this. Now you can relax a bit.
Yeah. No, I'm really happy. When I arrived here, it was so empty. But I made it, and I had to fight for every second. The last 15 kilometers was another small rider behind me with Pozzato, and especially in the beginning when it was 10 seconds, he could almost touch me, and it was a big battle today.
Did you think that was a big risk, in fact, trying to ride alone from the Pavé de l'Arbre all the way to the finish with a man like Pozzato just behind?
It was the right moment. It's all about the instinct, and I felt it was the right moment. And I think if I would have waited on the other guys to come back, and I was 2 teammates, and nobody wants to ride with me to the finish line, and we saw it last week. So the only solution is to go alone.
Now you've won Paris-Roubaix 3 times. Which was the most enjoyable?
Today was the hardest. I think they are all. Every year you say this is one of the nicest, and I will see you just say today too. But I think they're all equal. But today was the hardest one of the 3.
But with your young age on your side, you could maybe equal the record of Roger de Vlaming next year.
That would be an honor. I mean, maybe not next year, but maybe someday. But first, let me enjoy my victory today and recover a little bit, and then we'll see what happens in the future. Thank you, all.
George, again, it seems as if Lady Luck wasn't on your side in Paris-Roubaix.
Yeah, no, I was flattered at the worst possible moment, just a mirror image of last year. Actually thought I would be okay because it was a feed zone coming up, but CSC went to the front and made into five groups, which or Saxo Bank, I'm sorry, which I don't think was the best tactic because they didn't have anybody in the first guys at the end. I think it was just a waste of energy. They were all back there, and you know, so it was just not a great day for me.
Caught everybody unawares, really, that acceleration by Saxo Bank, and at the end of it, they didn't have anyone there. But Columbia also had a pretty tough day, really. Yeah,
well, the guys waited for me when I flatted. Some of the guys waited, and some of the guys were not having a great day. So it was a comedy of, you know, bad luck and errors by us, and you know, just got to put it behind us.
Despite the fact that it's a mad race and a crazy race, and you're getting a bit older in your career, do you still want to come back here and have another crack?
I can't end it like this. I thought about it with 20K to go, and there's just no way I'm going out like this. I got to come back and give it one more shot.
Good luck, Rich.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time. Well, Johnny, we were all expecting something special from Martin Mascam, but it didn't go to order, did it?
No, I mean, that's the thing about this race, you know, there are some ethic rules and there's some rules in the whole game that we can't change, and that's a luck. And, you know, and there's one rule more, that's if you're not in position in Arenberg, the chances of you doing well in this race is pretty much 0.
Yeah, Martin had some pretty serious bad luck leading up to the Forest of Arenberg. Can you tell us exactly what happened?
Yeah, he has a punctured and there was a crash. So he punctured and a teammate gave me his wheel, and at the same time there was a crash, so he cut the field in 2. Then we have our guys waiting for him, and on the way they're bridging back and they're kind of catching the last end of the caravan of the car coming into Arenberg. And then there was a crash on Arenberg, so we also pile up, and he had to get around that. And even I was surprised that he was almost still in the first group. And then not reaching it, he had Brad Wiggins and he has CJ waiting for him, and they bridged him up all the way to the front. But then from there he was empty because, I mean, there was pretty much one long chase, and in the speed and how the race plays, everybody knows that's where to be in the front. So,
well, he's a young guy and he's got a chance with your team to come back to this race in the future. And you as a team manager, you've got to psychologically get him over this blow.
I mean, we have a group of very experienced managers and psychologists and doctors, and I mean, this is a big blow for not just for him, but I think for the whole team, because we saw the guys was there. They were motivated, and they did an awesome race with coach out front all day. I mean, everything played just our cards, and the only guy who had a puncture today, that was our man, you know. So that was horrible. It was just to see everything just on that second, you know, you lose everything what we built for months, you know. So it was a big blow. So. Tough day, but you know we seen it, we know it, we know he can be there, and we'll be there like Bonin was today. So we believe in it. Okay.
And I make it his 100th victory of his career today. First won this event in 2005, and then Fabian Cancellara won. He was in the action for a long way today, and then in 2007 the only Australian winner, Stuart O'Grady, picked it up, and then last year Tom Bonin took it, and today he adds the other one. Confirmation of the result then, a win for Tom Bonin, 6 1/4 hours today, 47 seconds Pozzato, a minute 17 to Hushoff and Hoster. Then comes Van Summeren, his best ever finish. Fletcher in 6th. Heinrich Hausler gets 7th at 3:13. Sylvain Chavanel is in 8th place at 3:15. Quinziato and Brechel completing the top 10 at 5:29. So there he is, Tom Bonin steps up. His reward will be another cobblestone. He's got 3 now. So that should balance the sideboard as he uses all of his strength to push that in the air. The proudest moment, I reckon, of any professional bike rider's life is to win the Paris-Roubaix. If you're a classic rider, this is the one you've got to win. And that cobblestone is the memento. 2005, 2008, and now 2009. The record is Roger de Vlamingh, who won in 72, 74, 75, and 77. If we stick to that sort of format, we can expect Tom's next victory in 2011, and he'll join Roger de Vlamingh. So there they are, the 3 of them on the podium. The cobblestone being gripped, almost hugged there by Tom Bonin, as a man who's now won it 3 times. On the right, as we look, the 3rd place Thor Hushoft of Norway, and on the left looks a little bit upset with himself, I suspect, disappointed perhaps Filippo Pozzato, but he shouldn't be. He was beaten, I think, by the best rider in the race today. There's no lucky winner, of course, of this event. There really isn't. So as the riders make their way away from the famous showers here in Roubaix, Paul, that was one great race.
It was an amazing race. It was one that was very difficult to predict. You never really knew until the final moment what the outcome was going to be. But that series of crashes starting at the Pavé de l'Arbre, I've never seen anything like that.
No, they're to be anticipated, though. The riders expect these things and they have to fight back. And Tom Bonin really did lay down the law today.
But when you imagine that that man has had the pressure of the whole country of Belgium on his shoulders for the last week after his defeat in the Tour of Flanders, even though it was his own team that won there, I think tonight is going to be a very relieved bike rider, but certainly he showed pure class to win number 3.
Now, we can't end this without me telling you that our producer, Tim Grady, who owns Well Cycling Productions, correctly predicted the 1st and the 2nd. He named Thor Hushoft as his wild card, who finished 3rd, and he named Leif Hoster to finish 3rd, who finished 4th. Now, that man is an expert. Until the 108th Paris-Roubaix, Phil Liggett saying goodbye on behalf of Paul Sherwin. Goodbye.
A winner. I got it. First time in 5 years.
He's in the money.
I'm buying the drinks tonight.